Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались з кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Наші
Hello everyone, I'm the Enforcer, and welcome back to day 689 of the news of the war in Ukraine. And we have some incredibly major news today, as partisan attacks have been wreaking havoc across the entirety of the Russian Federation and causing significant damage to the Russian war effort. Before we get into this news tonight, I do want to make a quick note that I am running this stream solo tonight. Stress has been getting incredibly high behind the scenes due to law school and everything else going on in the background, and for that reason, Matthew is taking a little bit of a break tonight, but I'm making sure to keep this news running and keeping it rolling, and I hope that y'all are able to enjoy what I'm able to come up with tonight. Of course, if you do enjoy the channel, make sure to hit the like button, make sure to comment and subscribe, because it helps this channel. Well, it doesn't actually help the channel to keep running. What am I saying? It just makes me happy to see. So grab that like button and smack that subscribe, or whatever the hell it is, and we're going to be getting into the news tonight. Starting off with the major news that Ukraine has knocked out the Russian power grid in Rostov-on-Don. Rostov-on-Don is a specifically major city as far as the strategic implication goes for the Russian Federation, with the southern military district, or specifically the southwestern military district of Russia, being headquartered out of Rostov-on-Don. This is a very significant change, and certainly one that we are starting to see may become a fairly normal trend. Most cities would not really have a justifiable reason for having their power grid knocked out. However, Rostov-on-Don is usually the staging area for most Russian forces that are moving into Ukraine at this point. It is the major jumping off city. It's also it's really the only major city that the Russians have in this area along the Ukrainian border. At the beginning of the war, there were actually several main hubs for the Russian forces: Belgorod, Rostov-on-Don, Kursk, and Bryansk. But as the war has continued, and also there were Belarusian ones as well, such as Gomel and Mzyr, but as the war has continued, Belgorod has become a minor hub for the Russian forces, but Rostov-on-Don is particularly the most important one, and most Russian brigades and division-level units that are either moving into Ukraine or out of Ukraine pass through Rostov-on-Don, making it a strategically important city. Not only that, this is also where the Russian military headquarters is, and many of y'all may remember that from way back in the middle of last year, when we saw that the Wagner unit took over the Southwestern Military Command headquarters inside of Rostov-on-Don. But what we have seen today is truly something absolutely incredible, because it is amazing to see, and I'm kind of building it up a little bit, but it is truly the best thing to see that there is a blackout in Rostov-on-Don. Usually this has very serious impact on the civilian populations when a power grid is knocked out, but in this instance, while there is a major civilian population, there is an important reason for the power grid in Rostov-on-Don to be knocked out by partisan attacks. And we see out there, the skies are pretty much completely dark. When you see people with their phone lights on inside their apartments, but beyond that, there is absolutely no electricity in the entire city of Rostov-on-Don. While the higher functions of the Russian army will be able to continue, such as the Southwestern Military District's headquarters being able to continue to operate due to it being hooked up to generator power, a majority of Russian forces that may be in Rostov-on-Don at the moment are completely without any higher level infrastructure to operate off of inside of the city. This could start to pose some serious hiccups over the next 2 to 3 days for Russian forces, and we may see that Russian casualties begin to climb even higher inside of Ukraine due to a decreased responsiveness of Russian reserve forces, the very limited amount there are at Rostov-on-Don, being able to move to certain parts of the front line to counteract Ukrainian movements. At the exact same time in Krasnodar, we also got to see that as Russian missile attacks continue on, and we've started to learn that they have the ability to continue to produce missiles, it seems as though they aren't as high quality as they used to be. One of these missiles, an X-101, gave up over the Krasnodar territory and ended up crash landing over the area. When I say give up, that's of course a very human term for an inhuman kind of a weapon. What really happened is that there was a critical motor failure on this X-101, and it seems as though it ended up crash landing due to a loss of velocity. But we can see right here, this Russian walking up to the impact crater.
Между Павловской и Атамановской.
When you see him showing the remnants of this X-101, it actually dug a fairly significant crater.
Прям ракета. Еще дымится.
You see him looking around here. overall, beyond the video just showing the remnants of the X-101, there's not really a lot more that we can get out of it, but the proof that apparently Russian missiles are beginning to degrade in quality, considering that a lot of these are brand new, being produced in the fourth quarter of 2023, and probably even over these few weeks in 2024. The Russians have practically run out of their pre-war missile reserves, and have been using interesting ways to skirt around sanctions so that way they can continue to try and produce these missiles to attack the Ukrainians with. It doesn't seem that that's going to be successful for too long, as the failure rate is clearly starting to increase, much like this video is showing. Not only that, but at the same time, in the city of St. Petersburg, while the power grid was knocked out in Rostov-on-Don, probably one of the most important things to ever happen logistically to the Russian forces in the northern area of the western part of Russia happened today. In St. Petersburg, there are a large amount of major logistics hubs. St. Petersburg is actually the second largest city in the Russian Federation. And thanks to C. Fei, who corrected me on this, the third largest city is actually Novosibirsk, all the way out here in the middle of Siberia. And the fourth largest city, just in case y'all are wondering, is Yekaterinburg, if I remember the list correctly. But beyond that, St. Petersburg is the second largest city in the Russian Federation. And the Russian Federation puts all of their tax money into two cities, Moscow and St. Petersburg. If you are not on that list, you do not get really any tax money from the Russian government to be able to upkeep your city. And that's why, if you ever look at Russian cities outside of Moscow or St. Petersburg, they always look incredibly decrepit as far as their road condition and basic infrastructure, because there is no budget being put towards it whatsoever. In the city of St. Petersburg, however, with a lot of money and funds being put into it, there is room for major logistics hubs, such as this motor works out here, and also all the other industrial buildings that we can see. These are some of the largest in the country outside of Moscow, and really provide a lot of amenities and also products for the civilians as well as the military. Ukrainian partisans, just hours ago, were able to set on fire one of the largest major logistics hubs in the northwestern area, burning it to the ground. Here is the picture right here of that logistics hub on fire. To get y'all a quick context of how big this fire is, those small little rectangles down there that you're seeing that my mouse cursor is moving over are full-sized semi-trucks with trailers. That is the entire building ablaze in flames. Thick black smoke billowing out of every single part of the roof and showing that this building has been completely destroyed. The skies over St. Petersburg were filled with acrid black smoke today, like you could see in this picture. This picture, actually, to try and show y'all where this is, you see this down here, this little creek-looking thing? That is actually the river Neva right there. That's what you're seeing in that picture. And we may be able to actually geolocate this off of that. It appears that there is a chute off of the river somewhere in that area, which is indicating that this picture may be looking at the river right about here, at the very entrance of St. Petersburg. Or it could be looking a little bit further down, possibly, but I'm not really seeing where else it could be because the river Neva comes from Lake Ladoga. So it doesn't really seem like there are a lot of other outcroppings of the river. So this seems to be a picture looking over downtown St. Petersburg pretty much. And we can see that this fire is completely enveloping the entire city. The whole city was covered in this black smoke today from this warehouse fire. And it also gives you a scale of how serious and how devastating this fire really has been. And in this last picture here, it seems as though this was a picture from a Russian civilian aircraft flying into the St. Petersburg International Airport, which I believe is down here on the southern end, Pulkovo Airport, looking north into the city. And we can see in this picture, the fire is burning very heavily and appears to be burning without really any control over it whatsoever. Considering that this airplane is flying in, we may be able to get a good idea of where it's looking and actually pinpoint this logistics hub or logistics headquarters. And from what I can tell, it probably is somewhere. Actually, it would not be over there. This is like trying to put a needle in a haystack. Sadly, I don't think I'll be able to find it. It is somewhere up in this area on the southwestern side of the city, close to Pulkovo Airport, but beyond that, we can't really get an exact location of this thing. However, if any of y'all would like to try and take the effort to geolocate this thing, I would be greatly appreciative, and probably a lot of y'all would be greatly appreciative as well, because it would be great to know exactly where this logistics hub was and why it burned down. Nevertheless, well, we know why it burned down. It was Ukrainian partisan activities or pro-Ukrainian partisan activities, and it is showing that the Russians are going to be in for a very bad time going into the future. Fires like these burning down major logistic hubs not only impact the civilian population of Russia, but they can majorly affect the Russian military. The Russian military does not operate a lot like Western militaries, like here in the United States, where the logistics are internally operated by the Department of Defense. Unlike the United States, the Russian Federation actually has private contractors that handle Russia's internal logistics, and even through the war, this logistics platform has not changed. The reason why the Russians would even do anything that sounds as stupid or asinine as that is because way back in the Chechen War and the Georgian War, the Russian military started to figure out that due to their forces being conscript forces and largely poorly trained, getting an efficient and well-oiled logistics machine out of a conscript force was going to be impossible. And so they started to look for other ideas or other alternatives that would be able to help the Russians keep the supply lines running, but also move it out of the hands of the inexperienced conscripts and into the hands of hopefully an experienced company. The Russians began to literally just send out contracts for companies to fulfill Russia's logistical needs for the military, and it has ended up being an unmitigated disaster ever since they started. They have not reversed that decision, however. It's still the model they use supply-wise to this day, but it is certainly showing that the Russians are in very bad shape. And considering that private companies using logistics hubs like these are running the Russian military pretty much, this means that the Russians are pretty much done for when logistics fires or logistics hubs fires happen like this, because it is actually affecting the Russian military, unlike it would with a Western military. But beyond that, this fire was absolutely severe, and along with the power grid being completely knocked out in Rostov-on-Don, from what we understand, due to partisan activities, it has brought up a very interesting question. A lot of y'all know that the Russians always feel like they have to respond to these attacks in one way or another, whether it be to attack the infrastructure of Ukraine, or to conduct some kind of internal crackdowns in Russia, maybe even a miniature purge to deal with this situation and try and find out who the partisans are and where they may be. Or sometimes they even ignore the problem, or, of course, the very rare idea of considering a peace option. A lot of different ideas are had about what the Russians may do in response to this, because the two instances at Rostov-on-Don and at St. Petersburg today are so severe, we would probably think that the Russians would have to have a reaction to this, or shockingly enough, may not have a reaction at all. And this is where we ask the question, how will Russia respond to these partisan attacks? And a lot of y'all have actually weighed in and believe that they will probably strike Ukraine in retaliation of these partisan attacks, which is not that far out of the question. We have seen the Russians launch attacks like these before, way back in the day. And I also have to thank Carl Elwell real quick, because Carl Elwell has actually thrown in the exact coordinates to that factory. So let me make sure to take my Google Maps off screen, plug that in, and then we'll bring it back. So let me go throw that in. And I thank you so much, my dear comrade, because we were able to find the coordinates. This is apparently the building, according to Carl Elwell, that was stricken and destroyed. And the one that's really bringing up that question of what are the Russians going to do? And I think that is great to know that we have amazing people like Carl in here that are able to get us coordinates. And also, I think I would have to probably agree with the majority of y'all that said that they probably will end up striking Ukraine over this. I think that is probably a certainty. Hopefully, the Ukrainian air defense will be able to stand up against the attacks and make sure not to let a large amount of the Russian drones and missiles that will be launched through their air defense and hit their target. But an equally large amount of y'all, 35% of y'all, actually said that the Russians are probably going to conduct internal crackdowns. And that is an interesting concept, and one that we've seen on lower levels in the Russian military, but it rarely ever affects the guys at the top, or more so, the cream on top of the milk. We rarely ever see it affect the people inside the inner circle of the Kremlin, like Shoigu or Gerasimov, or anybody like that, but it is entirely possible that there may be some kind of internal crackdowns against the military in Russia, against the civilian sector in Russia, or even against the common citizenry themselves, maybe even suppressing their rights and trying to make sure that things like this can not happen at the speed and rate at which they're happening right now, like in these two major instances today. And equally, well, a smaller amount of y'all said that the Russians are just going to outright ignore the problem and not really put a lot of stock or effort into trying to find a solution or do anything in response. And while it was a smaller amount of y'all, actually quite a small amount, only 15% of y'all, that said that that probably would be the case, it may actually be true. The Russians have been known in the past to ignore things here and there. Quite commonly, they will just let stuff slide under the rug and will never bring it up as an issue or a problem. And that may be entirely possible as well. And a literal minuscule amount of y'all, 3%, said that they may start to consider peace options. And that is a fairly interesting concept as well. I think they probably won't. But it's interesting to see that 3 to 4% of y'all are very optimistic and think that they may even consider peace options, considering that partisan attacks like these are beginning to cripple the Russian military. But with that, we're going to be moving on from this major news and events of the partisan attacks here in Western Russia, and we're going to start assessing what the Russian military is doing internally on the logistics end. Because while all of these attacks are affecting the external logistics of the Russian army, there is a lot to be said about the serious problems that the Russians are having internally as far as their logistics go. And this brings us to the city of Omsk. The city of Omsk is way out in the middle of nowhere in Russia. And many of y'all may actually be interested in this, but a lot of y'all may notice, many of the astute folks here, which is most of y'all, may notice that many major Russian cities straddle this little area on the southern border of the Russian Federation all the way over to the area of Irkutsk, and then the major cities practically stop until you get to Vladivostok down here. Many people would probably ask, why is that the case? Because many people are told that Siberia is a completely uninhabitable and hellish place. It's just freezing cold all year round. It sucks. You can't even grow crops there. The interesting story about how these cities even came into being outside of the eastern range of the Ural Mountains is the Transcontinental Railroad. Well, actually, the Trans-Siberian Railway. Sorry, the Transcontinental Railroad's the one in the United States. The Trans-Siberian Railway was built by the Russian Empire around the 1880s to try and get some central government control, some of that good Russian oppression, out to the far reaches of the Russian Empire. And so they built the railroad. Literally, where every single major city is at this point, the railroad passes through. And these cities built around the railroad to support its operations and to make sure that the Russian Empire could expand its influence out into these far reaches of Russia. Way back in the day, czars like Catherine the Great actually believed that this area of Russia, beyond the Ural Mountains, was going to be the equivalent of the great empires of Britain and France for the Western powers. They thought that there was going to be a boundless amount of resources to be had in this area and an endless amount of wealth to bring to the western part of Russia. It never really ended up being the case. The resources in the eastern part of Russia were always underutilized, and even still to this day, it's just not really producing a lot. The only reason why these cities became major ones, and cities like Novosibirsk and Yekaterinburg are able to claim to be the third and fourth largest cities of Russia, is entirely because during the times of the Soviet Union, Joseph Stalin ordered that a large amount of Soviet industry began to move towards the Ural Mountain range or even further east than the Ural Mountains to try and protect them from invasion. And that actually happened a little bit before World War II and also heavily during World War II. A lot of industries ended up moving out here, and that's why these cities are as large as they are in the present day. But just a little bit of an interesting story to share with you all about how this area came into being. And during the Soviet times, considering that it was built up during the times of the Russian Empire and the earlier years of the Soviet Union, cities like Omsk, Novosibirsk, and Yekaterinburg began to be heavily preferred by the Russians to be staging locations for tank storage facilities and also weapon storage facilities far away from the meddling powers of the West, like such as NATO. These areas would be very safe from attack and probably would never be directly attacked or destroyed by Western nations. And so the Soviets began to build up their tank yards here. And after the collapse of the Soviet Union and these tanks started to fall into disrepair, the tanks remained. And to this day, the tanks laid undisturbed until this war began. And we've seen over a gradual amount of time, over the course of 2 years, the tank yards at Omsk are starting to run a little thin. And I'm going to be showing you all a time lapse here, showing this Russian supply yard over time, as it shows one right outside of the city of Omsk, and how it's been depleted over a pretty short course of time in reality. But here's the clip. We can see here, couple of vehicles missed. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, these are also heavy artillery pieces. These are the two S7 peons that are really the largest bore artillery pieces that we see in the Ukraine war. And this is a part of that supply yard. We can see that it got a little emptied out. And we can see another part of the supply yard, even more peons. And it looks as though a lot of them also went missing. And now we can see that almost in the present day, there is really no 2S7 peons left behind. Absolutely none. We can see these areas of the supply yards here. We can also see a picture of these peons during a Russian military drill. Now, really quickly, we actually have a coordinate here to plug in, and I'll be able to show y'all exactly where this is. So let me make sure to go plug that in. And here is the military supply yard that they're talking about. And you can actually see the depletion of Russia's heavier artillery systems in the supply yard, even in this satellite picture. They are practically laid bare. This supply yard over here with these peons practically has ceased to exist. Maybe 10% of the peons are left. This one appears to have been reshuffled, and around half of the supply yard remains. But these are very heavy artillery pieces and considered valuable assets by the Russian army. The fact that so many of these have been pulled out of storage to replace losses in Ukraine is showing that the Ukrainians' counter-battery operations are, as they have been indicated for nearly a year at this point, wildly successful and destroying a heavy amount of Russian artillery. But this supply yard in Omsk, it doesn't just house peons, it houses a lot of stuff. We can see right over here what appears to be some kind of a BTR series APC that is also sitting near the peons. In this supply yard, we can see what appears to be UAZ 469s that are just sitting around. In these supply yards, these appear to possibly be no. Actually, these are 2S4 Chulpons, the 240 heavy mortars that we've been seeing in the war before. We can also see some other artillery systems. Possibly, it looks like they may be Grads. Possibly, we can also see 2S1 Gudzivkas. We can also see even more Gudzivkas. We can see some BMPs of a certain kind, maybe BMP 1s or 2s. But this supply yard houses a large amount of Russian equipment. And some of it actually looks like it's been untouched, like this massive amount of MTLBs. It looks like they've hardly even pulled any of these out of storage. But what's really important is the amount of artillery. In this present war that the Ukrainians are fighting right now, the Russians and the Ukrainians are fighting a war of artillery, and so artillery pieces are very important to preserve and have in large numbers. And the fact that the Russians have lost so many of them, that a majority of the peons here in Omsk have been pulled out to be used in Ukraine, it's starting to show that they may start to run out of artillery pieces to even fire their artillery shells with. But moving on out of that, and also I saw Judy Wilson say, wow, they still have a lot of tanks left. Not really a lot of tanks in this player. Good point, though, but not really an excessively high amount of tanks. What we're seeing here is artillery pieces and armored personnel carriers. I did not see, while we were looking around, any main battle tanks. Like, for example, these here, they look to be 2S3 Akitsias. These also appear to be some kind of a supply truck or an MTLB. These also appear to be Gudzivkas. This actually appears to be an artillery storage site here in Omsk, used to pretty much just keep in storage any of the Russian artillery that is not being used at the moment. And this is also a little misleading to look at in satellite pictures as well, because you would think that looking at this, all of this has to be usable. All of these Chulpons here, they could just be whipped out at any minute, and they could just start firing these things at the Ukrainians. And that's not true. A lot of these vehicles have been sitting in place for nearly 20 to 30 years at this point, and have hardly been moved around. And when you sit these vehicles for such a long time, things like rubber gas seals in the engines begin to come apart. Really, everything begins to rot inside the tank, and so most of these are actually completely inoperable at the moment and really just sitting there as husks. It would take a decent amount of time and effort, and also a bit of expense on the Russians' part, to get a lot of these vehicles into an operational condition again. And so it'd be very tough to get a lot of these things out of storage and in operation, but it appears that the Russians are taking that time and expense when it comes to pulling out the peons, probably because they're considering these to be one of their only ways of stabilizing the frontline situation in Ukraine and giving their offensives even a small chance of success. But moving on out of Omsk and the Eastern Russian history course that I gave you all about why those cities even exist, we're now going to be moving back out of Russia, and I've got an interesting question for y'all. And I'm going to make sure to throw up a poll on this one. Do y'all think that the Russians are running out of military equipment? Because a lot of people are saying that it looks like they have a lot of tanks. Some people are saying that, you know, like me, that they don't really have that many in practice. And that's really just more for show, because these tanks have been rotting in place for nearly 20 to 30 years. So I've got to ask y'all, do y'all think the Russians are running out of equipment? So let's see. Do you think the Russians are running out of equipment? Yes, no, maybe. It depends on other. Let's see. Let me see if I can fit all this in. Factors. Oh, literally fit in perfectly. And so, let me throw that up, because while we continue to talk about what's going on in the Ukraine war, I think it's very important for us to assess those high-level things. A lot of y'all know that really over the past few months, we've largely just been talking about the frontline situation and rarely ever bring up the logistics. But a very good quote by John J. Pershing, an amazing general of the American Expeditionary Forces in World War I, is that amateurs talk tactics and professionals talk logistics. Logistics is a winning factor of a war, and without logistics, there are no tactics to even be had on the battlefield, because there's no rifles for the soldiers, no ammo for the rifles, no support for the troops. And so it's very important to talk about what the Russians may be able to do on a higher level, like we're seeing out at Omsk and in St. Petersburg and Rostov-on-Don, before we even really talk about what the front lines in Ukraine are looking like. The Russians may lose this war not even in Ukraine. They may lose the war back at home due to logistical failures, the Russian military's incompetence, the commander's incompetence, economic reasons, civil unrest reasons. There's a lot of reasons why the Russians can truly lose this war, and it doesn't even have to do with the Ukrainians pushing them off the battlefield or even winning an actual battle. It just matters about what's going on in the background, that silent war that both Ukraine and Russia are fighting deep in the recesses of the war. But moving on from that news and towards the area of Ukraine, it's time for us to finally get on into some of that location unknown news. While a lot of y'all have been talking about what the Russian equipment situation is like. And in this first picture, we got to see a very rare sighting of a Ukrainian Antonov 26. Pretty cool. The Ukrainians don't have a massive number of aircraft in their air force, so seeing any of them is like seeing a unicorn, in all honesty. And seeing an Antonov 26, pretty freaking cool, I'm not gonna lie. I really like these things. They're a basic transport aircraft, a fairly small one. I would say that it's similar to a Dash 8 here in the United States, although that's not a military transport. I think the closest thing we'd have to that in the United States as a military transport is maybe, I'm really stretching to think of one. I mean, maybe a C-130, but I know there's a better comparison there. Nevertheless, 1,400 of these things have been made, and a lot of them are still in use with many former Soviet republics to this day, a lot like Ukraine. The Soviet Air Forces used it. Oh, wait a minute, hang on. They said primary users. Hang on, wait a minute. That's not entirely. Here we go. Here's the list of military operators in blue. You can see it's actually quite a large amount of them. It looks like we have what I assume is Honduras, Cuba, Libya, Chad, Sudan, Ethiopia, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, let's see, Mozambique. Oh my God, how in the world am I not able to remember these countries? Angola, it is Angola. I was going to say Angola, but then I was like, wait a minute, is it Namibia? I got them confused. But Angola and Namibia used them as well. It also appears that, oh my God, why can't I not? Well, wait, hang on. Cote d'Ivoire. Why in the world? I'm second guessing my African country. Anyways, Yemen also uses Antonov 26s along with Syria, Serbia, Romania, Moldova, Ukraine, Belarus, the Russian Federation, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, China, Laos, and let's see, any other countries I left out? No. We can also see former operators in red, and, you know, those were most of the former Warsaw Pact nations, such as Germany, Poland, the Baltic states, a decent amount of the Balkans, former Yugoslavia, let's see, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Vietnam, Cambodia, let's see, oh my God, why in the world am I forgetting things tonight? Bangladesh, there we go, Madagascar, Tanzania, you know, the list goes on. Do I have to name them all? I don't think I do, but anyways, beyond that, a massive amount of nations have used the Antonov 26, but the Ukrainians don't have a massive amount of them. I believe they actually have a limited number, so let me scroll down the list to Ukraine, and we should be seeing it somewhere on this list. Let's see, Ukraine had around 22 of them as of 2017, so a very small number. But beyond that, really cool to see one of these things It appears that it was just sitting idly on the runway. We can still see the chocks are on the wheels, and so it's just sitting down on the tarmac waiting for some kind of a job to do. Hopefully it gets one soon, but really cool to see this aircraft. Moving on from that into our next little bit of news, we also got to see that the Russians are getting crappy headlamps. Very crappy headlamps. And I wouldn't count on this thing. So I'm going to make sure to read y'all the subtitles, and here we go. Well, and as for headlamps, that's what you're now getting from the state. This pathetic sort of a headlamp. It's literally just a flashlight on a head strap. That's what it is. Accordingly, on the back, these horrible adjusting fastenings stick out for F's sake. Plus, pressing the button is done by... That's how it works. Once again, this effing flashlight is of no easy reach, and while a normal headlight has, well, in general, this is not a headlight, but of a groin lamp. This effing attachment is just like the attachment of a... Oh my, I can't read that. I can't read any of that. The only good thing is we got 2 more spare stupid Chinese flashlights. Well, we'll have to give it back to them so they... Oh, I can't read that either. That's the end of that little clip, but I think y'all are getting the idea. The Russians are very unhappy with the headlamps they've been given. Apparently bought on Wish.com or Alibaba. They don't really like them. Apparently they had some very choice things to say about them that I can't read on air. But hey, you know, they're pretty vocal about how much they don't like those. And speaking of which, I'm betting you that those headlamps are just kind of the tip of the iceberg on things the Russians don't like at all. Russians don't like a lot of anything. A lot of them don't want to be in Ukraine. A lot of them hate being there. A lot of them don't get paid. I mean, hell, I was reading a story today before we even came on air. I didn't put it on the news, but it was a bad one. People are trying to get out of Ukraine at all costs. Well, specifically the Russians. But a lot of y'all have been asked a good question about Russian military equipment, like that headlamp. And it kind of gives an indicator with crap like that, you know, they probably would not really enjoy a lot of that high-end equipment, a lot of that good equipment, that good equipment. Is it good? Is it bad? What is it? Are they running out of stuff? Is that why they're getting crappy stuff like that? And the majority of y'all say yeah. 56% of y'all, the overwhelming majority, said yes. They're running out of equipment. And that question is kind of answering a little bit of everything. They're obviously running out of head straps and flashlights because they're getting those little pieces of garbage. We're also seeing that down in places like Omsk, the Russians are running out of heavy artillery. They're starting to run out of stuff all across the board. And I think it is starting to show the Russians are continuing to run out of military gear. And I don't think it's, you know, running out of it per se to the point that they're about to end the war tomorrow, but they're certainly not going to be able to keep up a war with the rate of consumption of their equipment that they're going through at the moment. No doubt about it. I think that they're probably going to end up having to find ways to shortcut things like they did with the headlamps because they're just running out of equipment like that. It's not going well for them at all. But some of y'all, a quarter of y'all, actually held out a little bit of hope for the Russians and said, no, they're not. And that may also equally be true because, like in Omsk, we saw that while the artillery is getting pounded, apparently, and the reinforcements and the requirements for those are very high, they still do have a decent amount of other kinds of artillery systems that have not been pulled out of the woodworks yet, although we don't know if they're usable or not. And another 20% of y'all took the very philosophical answer, which is that it's maybe, and it kind of depends on other factors like the Russian war industry and what they may be able to produce. But beyond that, very interesting to hear that a majority of y'all do think that the Russians are running out of military equipment, and hopefully that is the case, and we'll see that as time continues to go on. But moving on from that little bit of location unknown news and into our next one, we also got to see a little picture from a Ukrainian drone. A picture does say 1,000 words. Every picture is worth so many words, and we speak thousands of words on this channel each and every night. But this picture was particularly interesting. This was taken from an FPV drone, and I gotta tell you, this picture speaks a lot of words. It says things like Harvey Weinstein and other kinds of interesting people who have also seen views like these. Maybe even Stephen Hawking's. But beyond that, this is a picture that I think will probably be a moment that has been burned into the mind of this Russian soldier, at least burned into the buttocks of this Russian soldier. It's a picture that really is worth 1,000 words, and maybe one day we'll hear 1,000 words from this Russian soldier, or 1,000 words in his eulogy, one or the other. But moving on from that and into our next little bit of location unknown news, we got to see the interior of one of the Ukrainian M2 Bradleys. And we're going to be muting that. But we can see a Bradley back there with the rear door open. We can see him showing off the... Wait a minute. What the hell is that? What the hell is even that? Now that's weird, but all right, we'll give it to him. And Skoda. They got Skoda steers. Skoda's not bad. We can see writing all over the top of this Bradley. Oh, we can see his Stalker. We can see Stalker and Shorny, which I think is like a Raven, I think, or something like that. And Marcion 99. I think it's some names of folks who have been in the Bradley. They wrote their names inside of it. But a really good look at that infantry compartment, and really nice to see that the Ukrainians really are enjoying the Bradleys. They love to show these things off here and there, and I think that's wonderful to see. And it also is showing that they're getting a lot of use out of these things, because if you all notice, these things have been well ridden. They're muddied up, very dirty, and that's showing that they've been going through a lot of action, at least mobility-wise, which we'll be getting on to a little bit later tonight, because many of y'all know, like yesterday, the Bradley is proving to be a lot more potent and a heavy puncher than we thought it ever would be inside of Ukraine. Moving on from that little video, though, and into our next one, we also got to see that a Ukrainian soldier had a Tacticat. We're going to be muting that, but you see the Tacticat right there sitting on his shoulder. Very cute, very cuddly, very good. And also, really quickly, we just got a message from LSA Everyday All Day on Twitter, which y'all can actually DM us on Twitter if y'all want to. And it says, you talked about shortages in Russia. There's a lot of corruption. You can buy an MRE in Russia for cheap. And then he talks about a YouTube channel that buys these MREs and cooks them up. And you're absolutely right. Corruption in Russia is bad. I mean, really bad. It's unbelievably horrendous. Russian quartermasters are always trying to find ways to steal a little bit out of the military system to go sell onto the open market, and you can even find that stuff online right now. Let me go find Russian uniforms for sale. I'm sure a website will pop up, and here we go. I think I found one. Let me check and make sure. So, well, oh, they're sold out a little bit, but still beyond that, the Russian camo does show up out there on the open market, like in this store, Russian Cold Camo. You can see here that apparently for $150, you can buy an entire waterproof and windproof suit in the Radnik camo pattern, straight out of the Russian military. What do you know? Also, by the way, if you ever see anything like this, like an ACU out there online, there is a decent amount of companies that just produce ACUs and just sell them in the public. You can just buy them here in the United States. There's not really a lot of corruption as far as that goes. But for a Russian uniform to make it all the way to where it can be purchased here in the United States and from a company in the United States, it's showing that the corruption is pretty bad. It's not just the MREs, it's really anything that can be taken and sold without a serious issue being made about it. So it's very rare to see Russian ammo, especially in the United States, because that would actually get you in a lot of trouble with the federal government if they ever found out you had Russian ammo or a Russian gun. But things like uniforms and other kinds of stuff that can be boosted and sold, Russian quartermasters, you can put money on it, are stealing it and selling it. LSA every day is completely correct, all day, every day, because Russian corruption is unbelievable. It is something you can't even put your mind to, but that corruption also costs lives, a very great deal of lives, especially for the Russian army that's still fighting in the field to this day. They're sending these guys into headlong assaults, and due to the corruption, they hardly are ever equipped with rifles, very minimal amounts of ammo, and have practically no support. These soldiers are getting hammered, and today was another example of that. 700 Russian soldiers were knocked out over the past 24 hours, a very high amount of them, and of course showing that the Russian losses are still staying consistently high. Not only that, but 15 armored personnel carriers were destroyed as well, along with 20 supply trucks, 5 main battle tanks, 18 artillery systems, 12 drones, 4 anti-aircraft warfare systems, and 6 Bobcat skid steers. Overall, the losses were very good for the Ukrainians, inflicting them onto the Russians today. And it is once again showing that the Russian forces are having a very bad time due to a multitude of factors: poor planning, poor tactics, poor doctrine, poor training, a great deal of incompetence, a great deal of corruption as well, and it's producing disastrous results on a continuous daily basis for the Russian army. And speaking of which, a lot of y'all have continued to talk in the chat about this incompetence and what's been going on with that. Many of y'all are saying that that is really what the death knell is of the Russian military. It's not the poor planning or the poor doctrines brought forward by the Russian army. It really is just that incompetence and corruption in general. It completely rots the Russians to the core, and you just don't really see anything like it out there in any other nation in the world, at least that's fighting right now. I'm sure the Chinese can give them a run for their money. But beyond that, many of y'all have been talking about it, and I think this is a perfect moment to make sure that we answer some questions from y'all, because a lot of y'all have been throwing in some pretty interesting questions, and I have to give a huge a huge thanks to Enforcer Is Thy Go for throwing in a $100 super chat, the biggest one of the night so far, and I got to thank you so much once again for the amazing support, and also thank you once again for helping the channel to keep on running. Enforcer Is Thy Go said, I've been waiting for all the holidays, day money and birthday money to come in, and this is your late holiday gift from me and my family. LSA, and take one from the chat. And I gotta thank you for the massive support, once again, Enforcer Is Thy Goat, and thank you so much for finding the channel worthwhile to support. We've said this so much throughout the entirety of the channel, but your support is what makes this channel possible. And if it wasn't for folks like you who found the channel worthwhile to support through super chats, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing running. We do this as a job. We work on this a lot. I work on this all the time. I take this very seriously, and that's why I'm even on air here again tonight, running this thing solo. I'm completely dedicated in our mission of making sure that we're able to continue to cover the news of the war in Ukraine and keep people as attentive and focused on this war as much as we possibly can. Folks like you help me to make that possible, and I got to thank you once again for being the GOAT and thanking us for running the channel, because it really means a lot to me, and I thank everyone for being behind me as I continue to try and run this thing. Y'all's support helps us out greatly in making sure that this vision and this mission of keeping the war news coming is possible, and if it wasn't for y'all who supported the channel, both in support and not in support, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing up. Now, really quickly, we are going to grab one from the live chat in honor of Enforcer Is Thy Goat, and it's from Alabama Cajun, who said, do you think Ukraine has already gotten location on that tunnel system the orcs are building somewhere? And I'm not exactly sure at the moment. Maybe they have been able to. I'm sure they probably do, although some of those videos that are coming out are not really showing exact information. It's just kind of a tunnel, and that tunnel could be everywhere, or anywhere for that matter. So I don't know if they've gotten exact coordinates on it, but knowing how Ukrainian intelligence works and the great level of intelligence that the Ukrainian partisans are able to gather in occupied territory, they probably would be able to find out where that tunnel is. If not now, maybe a little bit later, maybe a week or two down the road. And so with that, I hope that does address that live chat, Alabama Cajun, fairly well. And thank you so much once again, Enforcer Is Thy Goat, for sponsoring that chat and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're now going to be moving on into our next question in Warsaw Super Chat from Herbert, who threw in 200 Norwegian kroner, equivalent to about 20 US dollars. I think it's somewhere around there. But nevertheless, Herbert said, Slava Ukraine, and greetings from Norway. And again, thank you. And again to you, Herbert, thank you for helping me to keep the channel running. I know the speech gets repetitive, and maybe people don't like to hear it, but the reason why I give the speech is because there are very few ways for me to show appreciations to the folks who support. And it's easy to lose context of support because, you know, of course, as a fact of life on this channel, it comes in almost every night. But way back, before I ran this channel, I worked a job where I made $8.40 an hour. And of course, a lot of you all are about to be like, oh, that's nothing. Got paid $2.75 an hour. But that was like 30 years ago. I mean, the minimum wage has risen a good bit, and even now it's pretty tough to get by on minimum wage. But beyond that, I remember working for $8.40 an hour, and when I used to work at that job, I would always appreciate how much it meant when people would buy anything, because you understand how much a dollar is worth when it takes you an hour to make $8.40 of it. And so when people throw in support on this channel, I'm always very appreciative of it because I know how much it takes to make a dollar, and it always blows me away and makes me very humbled to know that people find the channel worthwhile enough that y'all would support it. And that's why I always go out of my way to make a massive speech and make a big deal whenever anyone supports the channel, whether it be $500 in a super chat or $1, because I know how much that means to that person and how that and how much it means that they would find this channel worthwhile to support. That's why I always thank y'all so much. And that's probably why I'll keep on thanking y'all in massive speeches, because I just know what it means to make a dollar. And so when y'all support us, it's an amazing thing to me. And I always want y'all to know that we're greatly appreciative for what y'all have done to help us to make this possible and do this as a job. And so beyond that, thank you so much once again, Herberg, for the support. That's why I always go through the massive spiel and thanks whenever anyone throws one in, because while it is incredibly repetitive, and I know it's repetitive, I always want y'all to know that I'll at least put in the effort to put in to make that repetitive statement to just get the idea home that we are always appreciative of everyone who supports the channel. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And we are on to the last one of this segment. And really quickly, let me make sure that I can refresh to make sure to catch the last one. And this one, actually, all three, I'm going to address all three of these because all three of these are from Ari Sweeney. And I got to thank you for throwing in a 10 Australian 3 times. And he said in the first one, cheers, big ears. And I like that one, and thank you so much for that. And also, Ari Sweeney threw in another 10, and he said, LSA, and long live the Leaf Spring Army. And then in the last one, he said, slice up pizza, and thank you, pizza. And thank you so much for the support and helping the channel to keep running, because folks like you make it possible, and if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be able to make it possible. Ari, I thank you so much for the support, and I thank all of the viewers who find this channel worthwhile to support. If you do enjoy the channel and want to see it continue to remain on air, the only way that we are able to make that possible is a super chat. Of course, I'm not wanting to pressure anyone to support, because the premise of the channel is that it is entirely free to watch. But if you do enjoy the channel and find it worthwhile, make sure to support the channel, because it does make it possible for us to remain on air. There is no special net in the background that makes this channel possible. We don't run ads, we don't have sponsors. And I will actually show this to y'all, because I very rarely ever show anything like this on air, which is our control room behind the scenes. And this is our streams. The past two were actually will monetize due to copyright reasons. Sadly, I have no control over that. But you can see that every single one of our streams is not has no ads on it. And we always make sure to not play copyrighted music, so that way we don't get a copyright and then they end up playing music on it. I consider it very serious, the kind of news that we're covering, that we always make sure to run this thing ad-free and sponsor-free. You can even see the proof right here. The only thing that makes the channel possible is the viewers themselves, the folks in the Leaf Spring Army who support this channel and help it to be possible. And that's why I always, and I just can't stress this enough, I always want to go out of my way, even if it means that we make the streams incredibly long, to thank y'all for y'all support, because it means a lot to me, and it makes this entire channel possible. I feel like not giving y'all that time to, give y'all a huge shout out and give y'all a huge thanks for y'all support is honestly disrespecting the efforts that y'all went through to earn that money, to even give it to us, so that way we could make sure to pay our bills, keep our lights on, and keep this news going. And so with that, thank y'all so much once again for the support. And thank you, Ari Sweeney. Thank you so much once again to Enforcer as I Goat, and also Herberg for the support. We'll be getting to everyone else's super chats a little bit later on the stream, but I want to make sure that we are able to continue covering this news, because it's very important news, as many of y'all know, and we've got a decent amount of frontline news. Also, by the way, just before we move into this, I want to give you all a quick little mention that not a lot is going on right now in between the United States and Yemen, at least since the last time we covered the news last night. Seems like things have gotten a little quiet again, and hopefully it stays that way. If it doesn't, though, we'll make sure to continue coverage on it like we were and keep y'all up to date on what's happening down there. But moving on from that, and a little bit further up and into the area of northern Kharkiv, we got to see today that the Ukrainians and the Russians were continuing on the battles in this area, although in smaller fashion than than they had been before. We got to see a PT-9120, a Polish upgrade of a Soviet classic, here on the ground, well, in the fields of Ukraine in the northern area, part of the 117th Mechanized Brigade, during a training exercise near the front lines. We got to see it moving around and firing, and it's just always important to notice and point out amazing things like these Polish tanks that were provided in the hundreds to help Ukraine to keep this war going and to keep the fight running. And it's great to know that it is incredible to see that the Polish have supported the Ukrainians so greatly. Moving on from that and into the area of Kuzymivka, we also got to see a Ukrainian tow Humvee. Oh, well, they removed it, but I'll show y'all one. It's not going to be the Ukrainian tow Humvee, but it's a tow Humvee. There was a picture, but it was removed. So let me go get a tow Humvee. And this, oh, that's a Tamiya model. I don't want that garbage. Tamiya, by the way, is a great model company, but here we go. This is the tow Humvee that was going to be shown, but it was in a desert tan camo pattern in the winter snow. But beyond this, this is the tow Humvee that we saw in the area. And these things are unsung. The United States actually sent these to Ukraine way back in 2018. We sent dozens of them. And they have been in use in Ukraine for a pretty good bit. We've never actually seen video confirmation of one of these things being destroyed near the battlefield. So from what we understand, all of these still survive the several dozen that were sent over in 2018. Those several dozen back in 2018 were also sent over with man pads and other kinds of defensive systems, air defense systems for the Ukrainians to use. And it's something that isn't really talked about a lot in the Ukraine war world, is that the U.S. had lightly been supporting Ukraine through several different presidencies, if y'all get what I'm saying. And that's also, you know, because a lot of people are once again of this mindset. That's also why I'm not really a big fearmonger when it comes to the upcoming election here in the United States, because I know, and this, you know, we do not address politics, but I want to make sure to bring this up for a quick moment. A lot of people have had a lot of apprehension and fear, and we've been seeing it in our comments section after the streams have gone up, that depending on a certain group winning the election here in the United States, support for Ukraine is going to completely stop. And at the moment, it does appear that it has completely stopped because of a particular group. But I have to say this really quickly. That is nothing more than a smoke and mirror show to try and get things interesting for the election, to make it look like there's a choice or there are options. There is no such thing as an option when it comes to supporting U.S. strategic interests around the globe. You'll just see that whoever is not in charge at the moment completely does not support the current thing, and then when they get in charge, they will support the current thing. That's how the U.S. government runs, especially in particularly important instances like the Ukraine war, because do you really think that the U.S. government is going to let Ukraine lose the war and lose our strategic interests and possibly our strategic bolstering of Europe just so that way we can secure a policy point? That is an absolute no. That will never happen. And I honestly think, and I might be wrong, we'll see, I honestly think that regardless of how the election goes here in the United States, at least by after November, once the election is done, I'm fairly certain that we'll see that support to Ukraine continues in full like it was before this election cycle came around, regardless of who's in charge. Because the fact that these Humvees are over in Ukraine, and these were provided in 2018, and a lot of our American viewers know what president was in charge in 2018, it's showing me that a lot of that talk that's being said right now out there in the public is nothing more than hype talk to try and make it look like there's a difference. And I don't think there's one. But if y'all, if y'all think there is, I mean, maybe y'all got a point. We're not going to go into too much, though, and I'd ask that everyone does refrain from politics, but I just want to give y'all a reassuring statement that, at least at the moment, while it looks like there is a massive road bump as far as support for Ukraine goes here in the U.S. government, I'm fairly certain that that road bump is not going to last that much longer, or if it does last for a long time, it's going to eventually be overcome once the election passes. And so with that, we're going to be moving on from that little Humvee tow and a little bit further down the lines and towards the area of Zoloman and Krasnorachinsky, where we got to see a soldier of the 73rd. And I just wanted to show this little AR here real quick. We don't know what kind it is, but it is quite a nice one. We can see a little micro dot on it, not a bad optic. We can also see, oh man, I forgot what this rail is called. It's not an M-LOK rail. Some of y'all may actually know what it's called. There's Picatinny, M-LOK, and then there's this thing. And this thing is like the least preferred option of rail system on AR platforms. There's just not that many accessories made for these kinds of rail systems, from what I understand. It's one of the most limited as far as accessories go. But we can also see that he has the dual mag holder. This little thing at the bottom of the magazine actually holds a second one off to the side of the rifle. And overall, beyond the front rails, it's not a bad looking rifle at all. It looks like he got a pretty good deal. We can also see some pretty cool patches he's got. He's got a multitude of patches on his uniform, and he also has a sidearm. It looks like it might be a Glock. So, I mean, this guy's got some pretty good stuff. And it is a key mod rail. Thank y'all for pointing that out. It is a key mod rail. And it looks like he's got a fairly good rifle beyond the key mod. I haven't heard the best things about key mod. A lot of people love Imlock nowadays, even over Picatinny, because Picatinny is fairly heavy, although you get the most accessorizing options with the Picatinny. It's still incredibly heavy. The Imlock is kind of a mix of the Picatinny and the key mod. The M-Lock is lighter, it has a very good amount of accessories, but at the same time, it does not provide the accessories available to a Picatinny rail rifle. Nevertheless, that's just kind of the ergonomic side of things. It's still a very good AR, and probably a very effective one that the soldier is very happy to have and use. And he even has, and this is really cool, I don't even mean to shout, but he even has, and I never even noticed this until we scrolled up, the cheek guards for the helmet. I think these things are rated to, like, level 3 maybe, so they can stop pistol rounds and minor things like that, really just shrapnel, but really cool. We rarely ever see that. And I would say it looks a lot like one of those Corinthian helmets from ancient Greece, or more so. I think this is honestly what it looks like, better so. Because Gregory, you're right, it looks a little Greek, but I think this looks a lot like a Roman gladiator's helmet from the early times of the Roman Empire. So let me see if I can pull up a Roman helmet, and let's see here. Oh, man. I'm about to have to rabbit hole for y'all. But here it is, the Gallia. That's what we're wanting to look for right here. This is a modern reproduction of a Gallia helmet. These are from the 1st century, which is some of the earlier times of the Roman Empire. But what's interesting to tell y'all is that the Roman uniform that a lot of y'all know, as a bit of a rabbit hole here, is actually not that common. Like, you know, oh, let me show y'all. Let me show you. I gotta go get the thing. Roman Legionary. There we go. There's my boy, the Roman Legionary. A lot of y'all will know the Roman Legionary to be those badass-looking guys in the segmented armor, the Lorica segmentata, the Gallia, the Scutum, all that stuff. Here's a good picture of what a lot of y'all would think a Roman Legionary would look like in the modern day. That is actually not that true. Rome existed for over 1,000 years in its original form as the Republic and also as the Empire. And over that 1,000 years, a lot like you'll see a soldier from 1000 AD versus 2000 AD look completely different. Roman soldiers over the history of Rome looked entirely different. The one that's famous, though, is the 1st century AD representation. And this kind of has a bit of significance because this would have been the kind of Roman soldier that would have been present during the crucifixion of Jesus Christ in Judea. And that's kind of what popularized this look of Roman soldier, because a lot of movies made during the 1900s were usually about, you know, well, whenever you'd see a Roman representation, usually it had something to do with Christendom, and these uniforms were fairly accurate. On top of that, not a lot was really known about the Russian, well, I'm sorry, not the Russian, the Roman legions until quite recently in history, until about the past 50 years. And so for a lot of modern history, this was really the only armor that we knew about in the Roman Empire, or even in the Roman Republic for that matter, because when the Romans collapsed, or at least Western Rome collapsed, a lot of their history was lost, completely lost to time. And so we're trying to piece together now in the modern day what the Romans lived like 2,000 years ago, and even before that and a little after that, because it's a very gray area. So this was really our best representation of what a Roman legionary would look like, but over time it's actually started to change, and we started to see, and let me see if I can find y'all some different legion. I know this is a huge rabbit hole, by the way, y'all, but I thought I'd share this with y'all. I think this would be... No, I think that's an auxiliary, sorry. That's still from like the 1st century or something similar, even a little bit after that. But let's see here. Trying to find one from the Punic Wars, because they were very different looking. Roman Legionary Punic Wars. This probably will be our best instance here. So here we go. I believe these here would be the Principes, and this is what, or the Hastati. I think this is the Hastati, but this is what some of the Roman legionaries looked like when Rome wasn't at its peak in the 1st century AD. I think this was 200, 300 BC, something around that time. They did not look that cool. But still, pretty little interesting point in history, and something I thought I'd point out to y'all, since this guy's helmet kind of looks a lot like a 1st century AD Gallia right here. You can see these little side cheek mounts here, and I gotta say, really cool. I really love that, and it's almost like a return to form, a lot like some helmets in the modern day try and emphasize the protective qualities of the Brody helmet from the First World War. We can even see some of them going all the way back to ancient times and the kind of armor protection that was provided to those soldiers of that day. But moving on from that little bit of a side note and that massive rabbit hole about what that helmet looks like, it's time for us to get on down towards Chernopepivka, where we got to see that a Russian tank was destroyed today. This was destroyed by the Flying Skull drone unit. We can see the drone coming right on down, popping into the back of that tank and causing a nuclear explosion, sending the tank sky high due to a critical ammo detonation. And with that, that's the end of the clip right there. Really nice to see that they were able to blast that thing into oblivion. And also, really quickly, before we move on, because since we're on the topic of destroyed tanks, I'm actually going to hop over the Bachman area for a minute, because Lethal Boy said, Enforcer, have you seen the video that shows the Bradley knocking out a T-90M close-up? As a matter of fact, we have, Lethal Boy. I don't know if you were here yesterday, but we showed it on stream yesterday. It was actually this specific video right here in the kind of like olive drab color just north of Stupove. That's the video. We have it on this stream. We showed it last night. And to give y'all a quick follow-up, since Lethal Boy just asked about it and we're on the topic of a destroyed tank, we were able to get some additional proof today of that T-90M and its demise. It was completely abandoned. Here's a drone picture showing that T-90M after it had been knocked out by the Bradley. Also, to once again follow through on this and kind of put the two pieces of video together, well, the video and the picture together into evidence, here is that video from yesterday, just to give a quick recap. Here's the Bradley first discovering the T-90M and laying down a couple of quick shots onto it. The T-90M missed that first shot, never shot again. Over the course of the next 2 minutes, the Bradley would completely eviscerate this T-90 until it was stuck here in this field with the turret spinning because the gunner had been killed. When you see it coming to an abrupt stop after hitting the tree, and then we never saw the crew bail out. However, while we never saw them bail out on film in that video, we did see that this hatch for the commander is open. However, and also, by the way, we can also see that the hatch for the driver is open as well, showing that those two crew members bailed out of the tank. However, we can see something that's very telling. The gunner's hatch was never opened, and that does show that that Russian tank gunner did in fact die, and that's why the turret was rotating. If the gunner had been knocked unconscious, he may have woken up at a later time, considering that the tank didn't burn down, and he would have been able to pop open his hatch and leave. He never did. So it's showing that what we were assuming yesterday from the video evidence is true. Somehow the 25mm APFSDS rounds from the Bradley had pierced through the front or the side armor of this tank's turret, killed the gunner, and that's why the turret was spinning out of control during that entire video. Also, Tothinator says the entire crew bailed on film. Let's check the film, and let's double check, because I want to make sure we're not saying anything wrong here, because the gunner's hatch is not open, and that the gunner's hatch cannot be closed once the crew bails out. So we're watching the film right here at the end. We're not seeing any movement at all at the moment. And that's the end of the clip for us. We never saw the crew bail on film on our end. If you have a different video, though, send it to us over Twitter, to our DMs, because I'd like to see it. But beyond that, we do not see the gunner's hatch open here in this picture. That's confirming the gunner is dead. The commander and the driver did survive, however, and it appears that they did bail out. Beyond that, we can also see a heavy amount of bricks and brick debris on the front glacis, showing that at some point the gun probably was knocked out of alignment from hitting a brick wall because of the debris left on the tank. We can also see in this next picture, once again, the burning flames from where those 25mm shells had hit the tank on film, and then another clip showing those small smoldering fires right in front of the gunner's position. Beyond that, I think this is certainly showing that this T-90 is gone for good and somehow got destroyed by a M2 Bradley. I can't put it into words enough, the fact that an M2 Bradley at such a distance should not have been able to take on and destroy a T-90M, or really any T-72 series main battle tank for that matter. Never seen that. In fact, that's the first time ever. That is truly impressive and incredible to know. And I'm seeing a lot of people say that they did see all 3 crew members bail out on another film. If y'all could send that to me, I'll make sure to take a look at it and review it, because we may be wrong, and we may not have all of the evidence and video that we have, but based off of what we're seeing right now, I would have to say that we didn't see the crew bail out. It does appear that we are able to confirm, however, in the picture evidence later on, the commander and the driver bailed out, but the gunner's hatch is closed, indicating that he may have not been able to bail out yet. But send us some videos if you do have proof of all 3 crew members bailing, and we will look it over and review our evidence and see if we need to revise that claim. But moving on from that in the Avdiivka area, and I hope that answered your question fairly well, Lethal Boy, and moving on and into our next area near Bakhmut, we got to see near Mykolivka some Ukrainian forces in that snow. We see them wandering around near that M113, and we see a decent snowstorm brewing up. And with that, that's the end of the clip, but really nice to see, and great to know that the M113 was able to move on its way out of the area. Moving on to Klishkivka, we also got to see a video made by United 24 about the Polish Crabs and the 2S3 Akitsias from the Soviet times operating in the Bakhmut area. Artillery is so important for the Russians and the Ukrainians. Incredibly important. And we can see here that they were being used to great effect in the Bakhmut region.
Now we will be preparing for the next one.
As winter sets in, war intensifies. Sub-zero temperatures and frozen, stone-hard soil pose tough challenges for soldiers. However, amidst these brutal conditions, Ukrainian soldiers are confronted with an even greater challenge: the relentless advance of Russian forces from multiple directions across the front line. In the rapidly changing course of the war, the Bakhmut region remains one of the toughest directions, as Russians are trying to reclaim the territories they lost this summer.
How's it going? Do you have some work to do? Yeah, a little. How's the vehicle? Is it working well? Yeah, all good.
Да, отлично.
It took us about 20 minutes and 1500 meters to reach this position, and now we have a couple minutes to catch our breath, and then we will start working with the Crab Polish self-propelled howitzer. So far, this exact unit have hit the Russian BMP. Ваша Саушка, вона вже пройшла одну зиму точно, напевно. Як вона себе показує в таких суворих умовах?
В принципі, доволі.
It's quite good. The system is reliable and works well. There are some challenges,
В принципі, хлопці вже
but the guys already know how to handle them.
відпрацювали, тобто тут
It has heating inside,
вчасно дивитися, можна
so they can work in comfort.
мають змогу погрітися.
Overall, we're happy with it.
По роботі вона це показала.
The guys lay some blankets here, carry mats. When they work, they roll them up.
Скручують.
Слухай, ну неможливо не помітити той затишок і та бережність, з якою відноситись до техніки. Це твоя ініціатива, чи це взагалі поширена практика?
Це
It's the whole crew's idea. This is our home, and we treat it accordingly.
живемо і доглядаємо за своєю цею.
Скажи, ось зараз така дуже напружена обстановка. Як, скільки за день ви можете там відстріляти снарядів?
It depends.
Наприклад, сьогодні.
It depends on how much we have available.
Є в наявності.
Ви відчуваєте там певну нестачу?
Нестачу
Yeah, would be great to have more.
сьогодні у нас
Today we only had one target.
ми працювали по техніці.
Here's the gunner's seat.
Блок
This is his control unit.
то все
Everything is switched on over there.
автоматичне.
The barrel is raised automatically, as well as the magazines.
Магазини також.
You can press these buttons and the system starts.
Можна нажати і систему запускає.
The loader also has a control panel.
Пункт управління. Він собі цими
Using these buttons, he sends the projectile here and rolls it out.
і викатує його на лоток.
The projectile lands on the tipping arm.
Потрапляє
We then throw it onto the charging tray and send it to the barrel.
Ми його перекидаємо на лоток заряджання і потім його вже досилаємо в ствол.
Currently, only a few brigades have access to modern Western equipment, while the majority must rely on outdated Soviet-made weapons. This artillery unit is operating a 2S3 Akatsiya self-propelled howitzer, which is over 40 years old. Due to its limited off-road speed of 45 km per hour, it is a vulnerable target for drones and therefore is mainly used as a stationary howitzer.
This is a Czech machine. Just a month ago we got it back because we had to fix the engine and the gearbox.
Такий ремонт, що там робили мотора, робили коробку, вона була перестала їхати у нас. І ми її забрали буквально місяць тому з ремонту.
When using howitzers, each gun is designed to cover a specific area on the battlefield. These areas are also called squares. Even though there is an enemy target close to their assigned square, soldiers must wait until the enemy enters their square, as the 2S3 is not able to quickly move and fire. So they must remain stationary and wait until the enemy enters their designated area.
That's why I say we need more Western equipment, like Crabs or German PZH. They have a greater shooting range and they can reach the firing position faster, fire and leave.
Під'їхати, відстрілятися і втікти, сховатися, заїхати.
When we arrived to the position, the mood was a little bit down because guys were waiting for the command to fire, and now shot after shot, this unit is working in the direction of Bakhmut. And I guess now we will be preparing for the next one.
First of all, I would like to thank our partners for their help. If it wasn't for them, it would be much, much harder for us. But it would be great to have a little bit more ammo, more weapons. My vehicle was made in 1986. It should have been disposed of by now, but we still managed to fight with it somehow.
Now that is the end of the clip from United 24 right there, and a very interesting look at those Soviet and even modern Polish artillery systems that are helping the Ukrainians to keep the Russians at bay in this area of the front. We also got to see down in the area around Luhansk a Russian anti-drone rifle. And other funny jokes that you can tell yourself at night. This thing looks to be some kind of a radio pole. I don't know what this is, but it's stupid looking, and I don't think it's working. And I think these guys kind of got the gist, too, with that goofy little look that he's giving right there in the rain boots. You guys are moving on from that picture. It's bringing me freaking nightmares. And we're now moving on down into the area of Avdiivka. We already covered the tank that was destroyed, the T-90M, near Stepove, but we also got to see a Leopard 2A6 in service in the area. Oh, buddy. This thing brings the Russians nightmares. And that's the end of the clip. But don't y'all just love to see these things? I mean, the Leopard 2A6 is a beautiful tank. Very sleek, great lines, wonderful looking. It's wonderful to know the Germans also provided a really good number of those. But moving on from that into the area of Kamyanka, we also get to see a destroyed MTLB. Ooh, buddy. This thing ended up in a bad spot. We can see it's, of course, charred and burned. But what's really cool is this picture, because you can see where the mouse cursor is circling right there, that the partition in between the wall and the engine bay burned out. So you can actually see the engine sitting in there, and you can get an idea of how narrow and how compact the inside of a MTLB really is. I mean, it's something to see. I gotta tell you. Whew. Man, goodness gracious. But with that, we're moving on from that little bit of news and a little bit further down the lines and towards Opitne, where we got to see a Russian base hit by a HIMARS.
Не знаю, нахуй, что это такое. Прилетело. Вот здесь вот запасной выход был. Сейчас, возможно, зайдем. Блять, не взорвалось бы, сука, какие-то. Там все горит, да, вам видно, что горит, я вижу. Ага. Дальше не пойдем.
Нет, можно сходить, посмотреть, где пробитие до подвала было.
А оттуда? Ну пойдем. Блять. Пиздец. Там тоже все горит нахуй. Не, там вообще там пожар, блин, пиздец. Все, уходим нахуй. Мы зашли с другой стороны
We see them
дома.
continuing to show the damage that was caused by this HIMARS strike.
Да там взрывается что. Пожар там еще внизу. Еще сильнее разгорелось и все. Вот тут были ретрики, антенны. Ничего не осталось. Все сгорело. Все еще сильнее разгорелось из-за ветра. Поэтому дымище, блядь. Пожар. Нашли один усилитель для антенны. Все.
And that's the end of the clip right there. But showing the Russians apparently didn't have that fun of a time at Avdiivka, and it looks like one of their little barracks that they were using temporarily maybe got knocked out a little hardcore. But moving on out of Avdiivka and down to the southern front, because we only got one clip in the southern front today near Huilopol, but it showed a Russian prisoner of war with a interesting tattoo. Apparently it's the I don't really know how to describe the symbol, but I'm sure when y'all see it, y'all know a way to describe it.
Осужденный Зуев Дмитрий Николаевич, 22 мая 81 года рождения, сам с Перми, города Краснокамска. По статье 111-4 отбывал срок наказания 9 лет лишения свободы было.
I think this guy might be on meth, by the way. But
Нога вот у меня.
Show me your tattoo.
Свидетель оставалось. Какого хера сюда пришел?
Чтобы освободиться условно досрочно.
Родители есть?
Мама одна осталась.
They're cutting up his little leggings. What's he got? Oh, hey, wait a minute. I thought they were fighting Nazis. Wait a minute, the Nazis are fighting Nazis. Apparently, according to the Russians. Look at that. Look at that. And also, that's a crappy tattoo. The symmetry isn't even that good, if y'all notice. I mean, you know, I think that kind of a tattoo is just questionable anyway, but that's still not even a good one. Like, they didn't even put an effort into that. But would you look at that? The Russians say they're fighting Nazis, and they're using Nazis to fight Nazis. What a twist. What a twist. This is better than, like, a mystery book twist. And also, by the way, I gotta mute that because that is copyrighted to hell and back. And hopefully we're not going to get copyrighted tonight. But still, I think y'all are kind of getting the picture. I don't think the Russians really know who they're fighting at this point because they're fighting Nazis. That's a little paradoxical because they are the Nazis. But anyways, we're going to be moving on from that down into the area of Krinky because we got a little bit of news out of Krinky today. It showed the village of Krinky as it is today in showing some Ukrainian forces moving through it. It's a bit of a smaller clip, but, you know, it still checks out. And everyone's saying that's a prison tattoo. Yeah, you know it. You know, he was making that while he was eating some ramen cooked out of an iron or something like that. But nevertheless, you got any jelly with that? Nathan Cox said that's a prison tat, more like a prison rat. Oh, but anyways, I see y'all are really coming up with some interesting names. Like GW North said, "Geschlecht verleiht in a deutschen Volk." But it also, we can see, let's see here, Hindu symbol. Actually, that is true. Jailhouse Inc., a shuriken, that's a ninja star. Apparently, I would call that the German ninja star. Let's see, Dirty Foot. Someone said fake? No, that's not fake. That's a real deal prison tat right there. But we can see the Ukrainians showing off Krinky, of course, heavily damaged from the fighting that's been going on there for a few months at this point. And also, by the way, this is at the break of dawn. It's the beginning of the day, and these Ukrainian forces are moving around while the nighttime hours are still kind of there, so that way they don't end up getting hit by Russian artillery or a Russian FPV drone, because that does start to become a serious issue during the daylight hours in this area. And also, Koljack, you are correct. The swastika was actually, to give you all an interesting little history lesson, was actually considered a fairly ambiguous or even a good symbol for most of history. Sadly enough, though, a certain group of people in Germany in the 30s kind of turned that on its head when they made it the symbol of their party, and then it became a symbol of pure evil. But before that, culturally, it was usually looked at, especially by Eastern Asian nations, as a symbol of good luck and fortune. And even to this day, a lot of them still look at it like that. But now we can see during the daylight hours, a little bit later on in the day, the true state of Krunki. And it is seriously damaged, and if that, destroyed. This is a soldier moving around. It looks like they're actually close to the road next to the forest, heading towards the Aleski Sands. See him moving on forward, actually through some pretty open terrain, a pretty risky move. We see him moving on into the Aleski Forest, actually, once again proving that the Ukrainians do have control of the forest belt for a little bit. And I think it's very important for us to note this, because there are inaccuracies on battlefield maps, and I've got to give it to Deep State UA. They put their hearts into making this map, but at the same time, it's not accurate, because we just saw this Ukrainian soldier travel from about here on the northern side of Krunki, near the marshes of the Dnipro, and all the way in, wherever it is on this part of the village, down into the forests down here. And they're showing this entire area still controlled by the Russians, which we can see in this video is not true. I have to give a huge credit where credit's due, though, to Deep State UA. It's an incredibly good map, but in areas like these, it can sometimes be inaccurate. And we can see here, they're pointing out where this is, but that is not the case, sadly, because I'll show you why. Let me see here. Let me take y'all down to that area of Krunki. This area is not the area that Ukraine controls, because the forest belt that they were moving into is actually, see here, on the more so northern end. I'm not going to go into more detail than that, because that could start getting into huge OPSEC issues, but it's on the northern end, so hopefully the map gets updated soon. And also, thank you for sharing that, Aldo. Yeah, from what we understand, it probably is delayed. We haven't heard anything about the Ukrainian government ordering them to delay it. I bet you there is an order out like that, though. But at the same time, this has been something that we've known about on this channel for weeks at this point. And usually, from what we've seen, Deep State UA's map is delayed by about 48 hours reporting-wise. So it's well over the reporting threshold. They could certainly update the map and report accurately in that area. I just don't really know why they're not. But still, with that, that's all we saw in the Krunki area today, but giving us a very good idea of the depth and control that the Ukrainians have in this region of the country. And it's time for us to move on up to Kyiv to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 689 of the war.
I wish you good health.
Oh! Hang on. There we go. Much better. All right, here we go.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці, українки. Цей день вже увійшов в історію нашої держави. Сьогодні маємо угоду з Великою Британією. Безпекову угоду, над якою ми довго працювали. Це перша двостороння угода, яка реалізовує базову домовленість Великої Сімки щодо безпеки України, нашого захисту, нашого безпекового зростання. Різні аспекти, пряма щорічна підтримка. Ми зафіксували обсяг фінансової підтримки на цей рік 2,5 мільярди фунтів. І загалом на час дії угоди, а це 10-річний термін, кожного року буде вагомий обсяг підтримки. Це зброя, плюс підтримка нашого оборонного сектору, плюс робота наших розвідок, плюс санкції проти Росії, плюс робота щодо російських активів, плюс захист від російських ударів в кіберпросторі. Все, що стосується сучасних технологій. Дійсно, дуже серйозна і сучасна угода. Багато хто чув про зразкові безпекові домовленості ХХ століття між Сполученими Штатами та Ізраїлем, деякі інші подібні домовленості. Зараз ми сформували такий взірець для нашого часу. Це те, що додає нам впевненості зараз, поки ми захищаємось від російської агресії та фіксує наші сильні безпекові позиції на увесь період до вступу України в НАТО. Ключова наша безпекова мета – Альянс. А зараз на основі цієї угоди з Британією ми працюємо із іншими партнерами заради двосторонніх угод. До базової домовленості Великої Сімки приєднались вже майже 30 держав. Я вдячний кожній державі, кожному лідеру, які вже в цій безпековій роботі з нами. Усім, хто ще приєднається в цьому році. І, звичайно, я дякую Великій Британії та особисто пану прем'єр-міністру Сунаку за першість і лідерство. Сьогодні ж у Києві провів зустріч зі спеціальною представницею Сполучених Штатів з питань економічного відновлення України Пенні Пріцкер. Детально обговорили, яких кроків потребуємо для нашої стійкості. Дуже очікуємо рішення Конгресу щодо подальшої підтримки України. Підтримки, яка має значення не лише для нас, але й для кожної держави, чия стабільність залежить від сили міжнародного права. Цю битву маємо виграти. Я дякую усім в Америці, усім, хто допомагає нам берегти свободу. Обговорили з пані Пріцкер підготовку до саміту в Давосі. Там буде і важлива зустріч щодо формули миру, багато перемовин щодо економічного посилення України, нашої відбудови, наших оборонних партнерств з провідними країнами та компаніями. Цей рік має принести цілком конкретні результати для оборонно-промислового комплексу України. І це буде. Наш арсенал стане міцнішим. І, звичайно, я хочу подякувати усім нашим друзям в Балтійських державах. Дуже
Wait a minute. Some of y'all are saying this is yesterday's. Oh, hey, wait, hey, we have one from today. I'm so sorry, y'all. I'm so sorry. I didn't even catch that. Here's today's speech from President Zelensky. I'm so sorry. But this one's the one from the 13th. So here we go.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці і українки. Провів сьогодні кілька міжнародних зустрічей. Спочатку в онлайн-форматі з лідерами парламентської коаліції Болгарії. Провідні політичні сили, наші відносини, наша спільна безпека усіх в Європі. Хороша і продуктивна розмова. Я вдячний за розуміння саме того, що російська агресія є загрозою для щастя і добробуту усіх європейських націй. Також сьогодні провів зустріч з новим міністром закордонних справ Франції. Це дуже символічно, що перший візит пана міністра саме в Україну і саме в такий час, коли Росія пробує різні способи, щоб наростити кількість ударів по Україні та здатність обходити нашу ППО. Я вдячний усім державам, зокрема Франції, за дуже серйозне посилення нашого повітряного щита, за незмінну підтримку на полі бою для наших воїнів, допомогу нашому народу. Сьогодні ми обговорили наші оборонні потреби, зокрема і спільне виробництво, і дронів, і артилерії, і подальше посилення ППО. Я поінформував про роботу щодо формули миру. Вдячний Франції за активну участь в цій глобальній роботі. Вже готуємось до формули в Давосі, до представлення нашої позиції, наших можливостей, спільних можливостей усіх в світі, хто прагне залишити своїм дітям світ, де панує стабільність і має значення свобода. Наші цінності, а не божевілля того чи іншого диктатора. І, звичайно, вдячність нашим воїнам. Я хочу сьогодні особливо відзначити воїнів нашої Національної гвардії, які разом з усіма силами оборони та безпеки надзвичайно сміливо, надзвичайно стійко захищають українські позиції. 15-та бригада Нацгвардії, старший солдат Валерій Цеменець та молодший сержант Сергій Коваль, воїни взводу оперативного призначення. Я дякую вам за силу. 3-я бригада оперативного призначення, солдат Віталій Сащук, солдат Микола Нагайчук, солдат Юрій Касюта, 14-та бригада молодший сержант Володимир Олійник, старший сержант Василь Чернююк. Я дякую вам, хлопці. Окремо відзначу також воїнів Центру спецпризначення Нацгвардії Омега, зокрема хлопців першого загону, які ефективно виконують завдання на Авдіївському напрямку. а також усіх воїнів 3-го загону Омеги, які воюють на Мелітопольському напрямку, підсилюючи підрозділи Сил оборони. Я дякую вам за знищення ворога, хлопці. Я дякую усім вашим побратимам, усім, хто точно знає, що незалежність не буває нагородою. Незалежність здобувають сміливі. Я дякую усім в Україні, хто саме такий, і усім у світі, хто допомагає нашій державі. Слава Україні!
And Rom Slava. And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky tonight here on day 689 of the news of the war in Ukraine. And that moves us into the second segment of the stream where I get to talk to all of y'all. And boy, oh boy, do we have a time to talk tonight. We're going to be addressing the only question that I asked y'all recently in between the last segment and this one. And then I'll also be moving into all of the super chats that have been sent in tonight and thanking each one of y'all individually for helping the channel to keep running and addressing any comments and concerns that you may have or even questions for that matter. And then we'll be moving on into the live chats. Now, I hope that this is something new because usually throughout the course of a normal show, we will gather up live chat questions, and usually they are from the very beginning of the stream and then just kind of kept around. I would highly encourage everyone to stick around tonight because I do not have a list of live chats pre-assembled to answer. In fact, I haven't been able to really collect any live chats at all tonight. And so if you stick around until after I get done addressing the super chats and also this poll, I will be able to answer your questions probably live on air. I might even be able to get around to all of them, or if they are addressed to @the_enforcer. And so stick around because I will be able to answer your questions tonight for sure, and I will be trying to get to as many of them as I possibly can. But moving on into our first super chat of the night, and I've got first super chat of this segment, I have to give a massive shout out to someone y'all all know. Someone who has been here for a long, long time. That person is Walter A. Lakota Jr., who threw in a whopping $200 super chat and said his traditional line, "Aloha, the Enforcer and Enforcer Matt, and LSA from OG Allison Bosun." It seems this war is in Ukraine is going to have some major changes or turn of events this year. It'll probably happen around the middle or ending of spring. And Walter, I gotta thank you for that massive support and helping this channel to keep running. The biggest support of the night by far. And I gotta thank folks like you who throw in unbelievably large support like that because it helps this channel to keep on running, and we are very humbled to know that y'all find this channel so worthwhile that y'all would hit the like button like y'all have tonight. 2,300 likes. So many of y'all would be here at a single time, and not only that, folks like you, Walter, would support the channel. I would agree with you. I think that we're probably going to see big things start to happen by late spring this year in Ukraine's favor. I think that's probably the timetable that we are going to be looking at as well, because by then Russian offensives will have ended. In success or failure, it's not matter. They probably will have ended by that point, and the Ukrainians will be eyeing their next battlefield to fight in. Usually it's kind of a tit-for-tat sort of thing in a war where one side's conducting an offensive, the other is defending, and then once that battle's over, the other side then conducts their offensive. And that's usually how a war goes. So I would agree with you, Walter. I think that it will be the timetable we're looking at, and I got to thank you once again for that unbelievably massive support. Many viewers cannot support like that. And I never want people to think that y'all have to support like that, but folks like you, Walter, and Mark, the Kinetic Possum, and folks like folks like Enforcer is the GOAT, Enforcer for President, BC Skyman, Cindy Mitchell, an endless list of folks. So many of y'all help this channel to keep on running, and support like that is truly unbelievable. Usually, most of the time, I don't even feel like we deserve that level of support, but it blows us away, and we are greatly appreciative to folks like you who find this channel worth that much. It just, honestly, I'm always at a loss for words, and thank you so much once again for the massive support. I hope I was able to address your comment well, and thank you for being a longtime member of the Lee Spring Army and helping this channel to keep rolling. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is from Jenna. And I believe a part of that E4 Mafia, baby. And also, Jenna said, "For the pizza fun, and thank you for reliable news." And I gotta thank you so much, Jenna, for enjoying our reliable news. Hell or hell or high water, I will guarantee y'all that this stream will run 6 days a week. I've always made sure that it'll run 6 days a week, whether it's just me, whether it's a team, whether it'll be me going on into the future alone, whatever the case may be. I will always make sure to run this news for y'all. This channel has meant a lot to me, and I rarely ever get to mention that. I mention that a good deal during the Christmas address, but this channel means a lot to me, and what it's been in my life and what's been for many of y'all is certainly something that's very special and something that I can never downplay. It's one of the most, it is in fact the most important thing that I've ever done in my life, especially with the impact it's been able to have on people, raising $1.4 million for nonprofits. Nothing in my life has ever even gotten close to having that big of an impact or helping out that much. And the fact that folks like you, Jenna, are supporting this channel, which is something completely different from the fundraiser, because while we've been able to raise 1.4 million for Ukraine, we don't, you know, we don't, that none of that goes to us. I think that's the best way to explain it. So we are entirely on our own and floating in a completely separate boat from our fundraisers. And folks like you, Jenna, who support the channel, folks like everyone who supported tonight, make it possible for me to do something that really is my dream. And I don't get to say that a lot, but being an attorney and getting into Congress and everything, that is, of course, a big thing to me. In trying to become president, that's a very big thing. But in the meantime, this has been a dream of mine. I never thought in my days that I'd be able to sit down on the internet and run a show where I get to talk to all of y'all about something that is a very deep passion of mine, which is military history, global strategy, and war analysis. That's something that's always been interesting to me since I was a little kid. I read endless books about it. And if you had asked me years ago that would I ever believe that I would be able to sit down and do it as a job to cover a war, have a massive impact on that war, and not only that, do this for a living, I would have said, you are out of your mind. That would never happen in any of my days. I'll die before that ever happens. And yet, y'all have been able to make it possible, Jenna, and your support helps me to be able to keep things running in the background and keep this thing going. And that means a lot to me. And that's always, and I have to say this because last night, there's a little bit of a thing brought up about how I give long speeches to thank folks. And yes, it's a long speech every single time. That I will admit. But I give those speeches for those reasons. I give them because it means a lot to me. This isn't just a thing that I'm doing, you know, as like a side gig right now. This is the biggest thing that I'm doing in my life. Bigger than law school, bigger than anything. And I've got to thank folks like you for supporting the channel because you're helping me to make this a job and be able to do this. And I just can't thank y'all enough for that. And so thank you so much once again for enjoying the reliable news and supporting that pizza fund, because folks like you help me to make this channel possible. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $100 donation from Shakamuk. And Shakamuk, thank you for the support, the massive support. Didn't even throw in a comment, just raw support with no comment attached. And I've got to say again, I'm not going to go through an incredibly long speech, Shakamuk, because I just went through one with Jenna, and I want to make sure to kind of cut them a little short. But beyond that, thank you so much, Shakamuk, for the support. You didn't even throw in a comment. That is just to help the channel to keep rolling. And I got to tell you, that is a real muckashak right there. And thank you so much for enjoying the channel and supporting it and finding it worthwhile. And you know, not to go through the whole spiel, but you're helping me to do this. There's many reasons why I enjoy doing this. It's one, my passion. Two, it's something I know a lot about. Three, it's something I greatly care about. Four, we've been able to help out so much over there. There's an endless list of things that I could come up with that explain why I enjoy doing this so much. And the fact that y'all been able to support this channel like that, Shakamuk, with that massive support and help me to keep this thing running and to help me keep a vision and a dream alive is truly incredible. Honestly, making me a little bit emotional, but still, thank you for the massive support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are now going to be on to the next one, which is from Scott Kemp. And Scott threw in a 20, and he said, stay in school. Goats! Thank you, Scott Kemp, for the support. And we will make sure to stay in school. That's kind of a reason why things have been getting a little heated on air a little bit because it's very stressful to try and do law school and do this at the same time. But I got to thank you so much for the support and encouraging us to stay in school, because I'm trying to make sure that I do that in the background. That's actually something that we were debating before law school started again, to be completely honest with y'all, because now the boat sailed, so there's no going back now. I'm in law school again for another semester. But I was debating whether I should drop law school and just do this full time. And that was a big debate of mine in my head. That was also a big debate in Matthew's head. And I thought about it. And for a while, I was actually going to quit law school and just do this full time. But then I thought, that's the easy way out. And I've never picked the easy way out in my life. I've always picked for things to be difficult, because picking the right thing isn't always the easiest thing. And I gotta say that it's great to know that folks like you, Scott, in the Sleep Spring Army, support our decision to work ourselves to death by both going to law school and doing YouTube. And I know a lot of people are always saying, take care of your mental health, and, you know, don't overwork yourself, and don't drop dead, and don't drop law school. And it's something that always weighs on me, and it's something that always causes a lot of stress and overwork in the background. But the important thing that I always remember is that there are two important separate reasons why I am working myself to exhaustion each day. I'm working myself to exhaustion to help out people in Ukraine and help all of y'all, the tens of thousands of y'all, get the news of what's going on over there. The other reason why I'm going to law school is to make sure that the overall ambition of me trying to become an attorney and then move into politics also happens as well. Two completely separate tracks, but at the same time, two very necessary ones. And I got to thank you for supporting us on our completely separate track of continuing law school and keeping everything running, because I appreciate that. I love to hear the support and kind words that people give, where everyone always wants everyone on the channel to take a break and sit back and relax, but I'm not really one of those people, and I always like a good challenge. I always like to know that I'm able to step up to that challenge and meet it dead on. I'm never one to try and walk away or cower away from anything because it's difficult, or, you know, we're getting heat or friction or something like that. I've never been one of those people. And I thank folks like you, Scott, who support us 100% and working as hard as we do to make sure that we were able to make this thing possible. And so thank you so much once again. And while it was just a simple statement of staying in school, it means a lot to me. And I got to thank you for the support and helping me to make sure that I can keep everything going, both staying in school and doing this. And so with that, I hope that does address that quite well. And we are on to the next one from Notorious GRG, who is a Notorious GRG. And he said, also, by the way, he threw in a $20 super chat, and he said, my heart is healing from my loss, so I'm back and crazier than ever. Even though I haven't donated to your channel, I have tried to be here for the fundraisers. And I got to thank you so much for the support, Notorious GRG. And however y'all spend y'all's money is y'all's thing. Whether y'all support the fundraisers, whether y'all support this channel, that is entirely up to y'all. But I've got to thank you for supporting the channel and helping us to keep this thing rolling. And I've got to thank you for finding it worthwhile to support. Because while you may not support fundraisers, there is a good way to look at it. You are supporting the existence of the fundraisers by supporting the existence of this channel. Because the fundraisers could not exist if this channel didn't exist. And I guess that's a good way of looking at it. And that's a way that you're contributing to keeping the fundraisers alive. But nevertheless, I hate to hear that about your loss, and I hope that hopefully things are getting better for you, because it's always hard to get over a loss. But thank you so much once again for coming back, and hopefully you'll be crazier than ever. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well, Notorious GRG, and you stay classy out there, and I hope that things are on the up and up from here. And so thank you so much once again, Notorious GRG, from the support. And with that, we're now going to be moving on to our next super chat, which is from John Garner, legend of the channel, an old guard as a matter of fact. And he said, thanks, and a little smiley face. And thanks, thank you once again for helping the channel to keep running. And thank you for enjoying it greatly. It means a lot to me. And I'll make sure, hell or high water, this thing will keep running. And so with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $10 super chat from Chase Matty. And Chase Matty said, a while back, you mentioned a weapon system called the Vampire as an anti-air system, but I thought the Vampire was an RM-70 checkmate MLRS. Just curious and thanks. And if I said that in the past, I was completely wrong. The Vampire is a RM-70 check MLRS. That is completely correct. And I can actually pull that up for y'all right here. It's a simple pull-up. And here it is. This is the RM-70 which is called the Vampire. And we can actually see right here, it's the RM70 Vampire 122 millimeter. This is a different chassis, but still the same operating system, kind of just a checkmate grad. Regardless, Chase, if I said that in the past, you got me. I was completely wrong on that. It is not an anti-air system. It is a MLRS through and through. So thank you for that. Thank you for the support. And I hope that does clear up a misconception in the background. If I did say that, I was wrong in saying that. That was a misstatement. But thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one. From New Jersey's UFOs, Secret Space Chemtrails. Very interesting name. And a channel legend, by the way, and an old guard, just in case y'all are like, wait a minute, does he not know the name? No, I know that name. He's been around forever. And he said, is Kyle Sisk really Matt? I don't think so. I don't think Matt has an alternate account called Kyle Sisk. I think Kyle Sisk is just brand new. And so, thank you for the support. I hope that does address that well. Kind of a short answer. And also, before we move on to the next one, I want to make sure to quickly get to something in the live chat. Omar Acevedo said, why does this channel sound more like a TV game show? That's a good question, Omar. Probably because of how I talk. Some people are probably blown away with how I talk. It's kind of unintentional and kind of intentional at the same time, kind of a mix of the two. But my tone and cadence really contributes itself to a game show host or some kind of a late night show host. That's not entirely intentional, although it is a little bit. That's probably why it gives it a bit of a game show feel. If it feels that way, I'm sorry, there's not really a lot I can change because it's just really the cadence and tone I talk in. But that's how I do it. Always try and make sure that the enunciation is as clear as it can possibly be, and not only that, I also try and make sure that the cadence is a smooth rhythm instead of what some other people do, which is like this weird, like, rambling thing, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense, and I don't really like the sound of it because it doesn't have a lot of energy behind it either, and energy is a big thing of mine. I love to have some energy behind what I'm doing. If I got on air and I just sounded like everyone else who runs a YouTube channel where it's like, hey everyone, welcome back to the Ukraine War News. We're going to be covering this tonight and, you know, all that stuff. I would hate that because I feel like I wouldn't even be putting real effort into what I'm doing. But I hope that does address that well. So that's a good question. One that people ask a lot. And so many people are like, oh, I hate it. It sounds like a game show. Like, what am I supposed to do? Change the way I talk? This is the way I talk. You can ask people I hang out with in real life. They'll be like, yep, he talks that way. He sounds like a radio host or a game show host everywhere he goes. That's just what he sounds like. That's his voice. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And I hope you don't have any ruffled feathers over that. I thought I'd just address that since so many people always have questions as to why I talk like this. But with that, we are now moving on to Jeeping with a Lazy Turtle, who threw in their first super chat ever, a 5. And no comment. But beyond that, I got to thank you for the support and helping the channel to keep running, because you did make this thing possible tonight, and I thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one from Ari Sweeney, who threw in 2 $5 super chats. The first one was a Shiba Inu wearing a business suit saying, good job, and hey, thank you. I do appreciate it, and I feel like I do a pretty okay job. And also, he threw in another 5 and said, let's go, LSA, and hey, I love to hear it, I love to hear it, and LSA, and let's go. Let's get it. From the Kiwi wife and Finn. Thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep running. And moving on from that and into Judy McDonoghue's $5 super chat, she said, General Order number 1211. If you've got $5 to support this channel, please find it in your heart to keep our enforcers alive. And thank you so much for the support, Judy McDonoghue. I got your first and last name mixed up. But I want to make this really quick. And also, I want to make this very clear as well. Judy, I thank you for the kindness of that statement and trying to usher in a general order and a rallying cry for the Leaf Spring Army to support this channel. While I have been saying on air here and there that support for the channel has been getting a little thin here and there, I never want to general order or make people feel compelled to support the channel. It's a personal motive of mine that I never want it to seem like we're trying to prioritize ourselves when running the channel. Of course, there's a little bit of a conflict of interest there, though. We do have to, you know, get super chats to keep the channel running because it is a job, and we do have to make money doing this. But at the same time, I never want people to feel compelled to support this thing and feel pressured to support it every night. It's a tough balance to walk there because I know that without support we can't run the channel, but at the same time, I know that's, you know, we have to have support. So while I always thank people and always want people to know that if they enjoy the channel, they should support it and help it to keep running, I never want them to feel like they're compelled, because I feel like at that point I'm kind of taking advantage of y'all enjoying this channel and trying to really monetize it way too much. And I got to thank you so much for the kindness, though, and I do not want you to think that I'm admonishing you or anything like that for that statement. That is incredibly kind of you to usher the Lee Spring Army to try and support the channel, but at the same time, I never want to put viewers in between a rock and a hard place where they feel like they have to support the channel. That's something I just never want to put people into, because I feel like it would be an uncomfortable position for them. But still, thank you so much for that kindness. Beyond my own personal convictions on calling a general order on super chat donations to the channel, I got to thank you so much for attempting that. That is incredibly kind of you, and I think that shows that you really enjoy the channel well and you want to keep running, and I thank you for that. That is an incredibly admirable thing, and I'm completely blown away and humbled that you would want something like that to happen. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, Judy. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one, which is from Jack Ray, who threw in a 50. And he said, hello from Mississippi. Hello to Mississippi. We know Mississippi well, Jack. We have been around Mississippi for a good minute. We have family in Mississippi, as a matter of fact, and we've been all over. You just ask us a place in Mississippi, we've been there. We've been as far north, I think, as Tupelo, as far south as Biloxi, and as far west as Vicksburg, and everything in between. So we've seen a lot of Mississippi. Some of it's great, some of it's not so great, but hey, that's the United States. Everything isn't perfect. Hopefully, though, Mississippi will be on the up and up, because I think it's one of the poorest states in the country at this point. But still, thank you so much once again for support, Jack Ray, and it's wonderful to know that folks like you from Mississippi are watching this channel. And also, by the way, a cool fun fact, did y'all know that interstate systems, there's actually a lot of videos about this on YouTube, but did y'all know that interstate systems are actually numbered in a certain way to indicate which interstates go where? Like Interstate 10 is the lowest interstate in the nation that goes directly east to west, pretty much across the entirety of it. Like, check this out. This is actually really cool. Interstate 10 starts in Jacksonville, all the way down here in Florida, and then it goes all the way across the United States and stops in Los Angeles. And it's the lowest interstate that you'll find. Interstate 8's an exception. It's not really like a full-on interstate main, the original interstate system. But Interstate 20 terminates... Interstate 20 is kind of weird because it terminates right outside of Pecos in Texas, but it travels just a little bit further north than Interstate 10, but it terminates inside of Florence in South Carolina. Pretty cool little fact. And they go like that all the way up. So the next one in the list would be Interstate 30. So you go out here into the Midwest, you find Interstate 30. Interstate 30 starts in Dallas, and I believe Interstate 30 terminates in Little Rock. It's actually the shortest one of the system. But then Interstate 40 does the same thing, going east to west, but just a little bit further north. And the ones going vertically from north to south are numbered very similarly. It's a really cool system. And once you learn about it, you're like, oh, that is so cool. But, you know, we'll cover that some other time. Beyond that, though, just wanted to address that, Jack Ray, since Interstate 20 goes through Mississippi. And I was like, cool little fact about the United States, just in case y'all didn't know that. But with that, hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one, which is from JD Macco, who throws in a 20. And he says, I love this community. And I love it too, JD Macco. That's why I love to come on here every night, because y'all throw in cool things. Y'all get to correct me here and there when I'm wrong, because I'm wrong every once in a while. And y'all also get to throw in amazing, interesting things. And I get to hear y'all's inputs and opinions on all kinds of interesting stuff. And I got to say, it's just very interesting to know that so many people are so ingrained and connected to this community and enjoy it so much. And I got to thank you, JD Macco, for being one of those old guards who has enjoyed it for nearly 2 entire years. And so thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one. Hold up. I just got word that we got a bot. Oh, buddy. I got to smack a bot. Who's the bot? Where's the bot? And someone said, not a bot alert. And then someone said, bot alert. So we'll see. We'll wait and see. I'll keep an eye on the live chat. But still, thank you so much once again for support, JD Macco, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, and also, by the way, I want to remind everyone real quick, because while I'm still going through Super Chats right now, this segment is probably going to start ending here in a second. So make sure to hang tight and stick around, because once I get done addressing the Super Chats and thanking the folks who helped me to be able to make this channel possible, I'll be able to address as many live chats as I can. I'll probably have about 30 minutes to do that tonight. So hang tight, and I'll be able to probably answer many questions that y'all have. And y'all won't even have to throw in a Super Chat for it, because like I always say, the entire premise of this channel is that it is free to watch. If you want to support, you can, but if you don't have the ability to support, or you don't really feel like supporting tonight, that is still fine. I can still get around to your questions if you have one. So just make sure to hang tight and stick around, because we will get to the live chats. But moving on from that, and into our next one, we have a €5, so actually a 10 from Activista, which had nothing in it. And thank you for the support and helping the channel to keep running, Activista. I want to make sure we cover that, just in case if I didn't. And moving on from that, we have a €5 from Octavian Timrosano, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And let's see here. Oh, wait a minute. We got a name. Who is it? Where are they? I gotta find them. Hang on. We got a Smackabot. I'm not seeing them, actually. Oh, here we go. I found him. Bori Oraga. Well, he's gone. Thank you, everyone, for pointing that out. Because I got him. Also, it's... wait, hang on. Let me make sure it was the right name. Did I read that right? Pogu Para. Wait. Rogu Raga. Anyways, whatever. He got banned. Anyways, from that, thank you once again, Octavian Timrosanu, and hello to Romania. You're one of our Romanian viewers that's watching right now. And I gotta say, Romania is a really cool country. Did y'all know that they actually have an off-brand? Well, I say off-brand. It's not really off-brand. It's like it's in the Dragunov family. But many of y'all know about this thing called the Dragunov rifle. Let me go find this thing. And calling it a sniper rifle is a little misleading. It's actually a designated marksman rifle, but this Dragunov here is very famous across the world as being like the evil person sniper rifle. And during the times of the Warsaw Pact, there were many nations that would produce their own licensed copies of these outside the Soviet Union, but Romania got the short end of the stick. Romania wasn't actually allowed to make their own version of the Dragunov because way back during the late 1960s, the Soviet Union invaded Czechoslovakia. And this guy called Nicolae Ceausescu, which I'm sure Octavian is very familiar with because he's a very important figure in modern Romanian history, largely for evil, and he's looked at as a bad guy these days by a lot of Romanians, generally because he committed a genocide against his own people. But beyond that, he denounced, as one of the few good things that he did, he denounced the Soviet invasion of Czechoslovakia in 1968 and said that that was very draconian, very imperialistic, and it was not a good move. The Soviets, in return, stopped cooperating with the Romanians all that much, and they ended up not allowing them to really learn a lot about the Dragunov and make a very similar Dragunov rifle. This left the Romanian gun designers with a bit of a conundrum. They now had to try and create a designated marksman rifle like this to keep up with the rest of the Warsaw Pact, but at the same time, they had to do it entirely from scratch. And so, what they came up with was this thing, the PSL. This is a very similar looking rifle, and if you look at them side by side, you'd be kind of hard-pressed to say that there is really a major difference in between them. But there are big differences. Major differences. This thing is described as a elongated AK. That's not necessarily true. There's a myth out there saying that you can actually use normal AK parts in a PSL. That is entirely untrue. Very few parts of the PSL are interchangeable with a standard AK. But beyond that, this thing is an interesting rifle. Some people say that the PSL sucks because of this problem it has with heat distortion, affecting the grouping of the bullets that are fired from the PSL. And as the barrel gets hotter, the spread of the bullets becomes wider. And that is something that has been noted and observed, and it's an actual fact that the rifle has this issue. But as long as you keep a low volume of fire and not allow the barrel to get too hot, the rifle is actually quite accurate. But beyond that, this is interesting. I just wanted to share an interesting fact about a little bit of something Romanian, which is that this thing is not a Dragunov. It's an entirely different rifle, the PSL. Entirely different internally as well. It kind of does operate as just a big AK. It operates off of a gas piston system. So, you know, all of that you know, when you think about it, kind of cool. And I've really wanted to, I'm not going to lie, y'all, because y'all know that we made one gun review video. There were supposed to be 2 that came out, and the second one never came out because it's still on the chopping block editing-wise, and I don't know when it's coming out. But beyond that, this is one of the rifles I'd like to review. And, oh, God. And when I say this, this is something that is going to be a damn hurdle and a challenge. I would like to do a side-by-side comparison with an SVD. But the problem with that is that SVDs are prohibitively expensive and very rare in the United States. If we were able to loan one, it would take a lot to even find someone who had one of these things to loan it to us for us to fire. And also, if we tried to buy one, these things are unbelievably expensive. These things are $10,000 at the minimum here in America because they're so rare and so sought after. And Jesus. I mean, it's a cool rifle, yes. But $10,000? I mean, that thing is like a Barrett M82 at that point. We may as well just go get a 50 caliber. Also, on top of that, that's practically unaffordable. Getting a $10,000 rifle just to review it for one video. But still, pretty cool. And I hope that shares an interesting little bit of history about Romanian weapons development. And also, I don't know, Octavian, maybe you saw this video since you're Romanian, but Nicolae Ceausescu did get executed at the end of his reign, and it was like France. It was like revolutionary France in a way, with how it all came around to being and how the guy got executed. Pretty wild stuff, but nevertheless, I hope that does address that well. And I gotta thank you so much once again for supporting this channel and helping us keep running, Octavian, all the way from Romania. And so with that. And also, JC9, you are correct. This is a long-stroke gas piston rifle. The SVD is a short-stroke gas piston. That is the difference. I think I misspoke a little earlier on that. But that's one of the bigger differences in between the Dragunov and the PSL mechanically. But moving on from that, and Putch 777 had said, yeah, it was brutal. I watched the video, and I didn't expect that they were going to hold like pretty much like a show trial. And then they were like, all right, that's it. Take him out. And they literally just walked him right outside the room he was tried in. And he was tried in like 20 minutes. It was just raw chaos. But then they walked him outside and some guy just took out an AK and just greased him. Both him and his wife. And I was like, dang, that was crazy. But they did that so quick. So that way there wasn't like, you know, the pro-Ceausescu supporters getting in a row and then starting a civil war in Romania. They kind of executed him quickly. So that way that would not happen and the resistance would die. And they were right. It died as soon as he died. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is truly unfathomable. This is unbelievable. Hal Rose threw in a $333 super chat. I'm blown away. And I got to thank you for that, Hal Rose. And Hal said, the Enforcer, I'm responding to Judy's general order because I can't afford it. I guess that makes me a level 1 responder. I want to say to friends that I helped get 2 young men to get through law school in 2024. And I got to thank you so much for the support, Hal, and helping this channel to keep on running. And I got to thank you for the truly unbelievable support. That is absolutely incredible, and that means a lot to me, and it means a great deal to me that folks do enjoy the channel enough to support it, to help it to keep running, because recently we were starting to wonder if people even like the channel enough anymore to support it, because the support was getting so low that for a short while there, Matthew and me were making below minimum wage for the amount of hours that we were spending running this channel. And that's something that we were very concerned about. And I'm always happy to see that folks do enjoy the channel enough to support us and help us to keep this thing running, because it means a lot to me. I don't know if y'all can hear it or not in my voice, but I get a little emotional when people say that they want to help us to keep this thing running and help us to get through law school and everything else, because it means a lot to me to know that the Lee Spring Army really does back the channel and supports us in our endeavors. And so thank you so much once again for the massive amount of support, Hal. You didn't have to answer that general order from Judy, but nevertheless, you did. It's really touching, and it's really great to know that folks like you support the channel that greatly. And so with that, we're moving on to the next one before I start really tearing up. And with that, we are on to one from Shakamook, who threw in a 5. And I got to thank you so much for the support. Shakamook didn't throw in an additional comment, but he did help the channel to keep on running. I got to thank you so much once again for supporting the channel, because folks like you make it possible. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a 1 from Teslins, who didn't throw in a comment either. But thank you so much for the support once again and helping this thing to keep on running. So thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one. And this is, at the moment, from what I can tell, and make sure to let me know, because I'll look back over the list just to double check, because I tried to do it in proper order tonight. Sadly, my list doesn't sort from highest super chat to lowest, so I tried to do them in order from highest to lowest tonight. But beyond that, Zero J Quan threw in a 10 and said, "Keep up the good work, Enforcer." And thank you so much, Zero J Quan, for supporting the channel so that we can keep up the good work, because people like you help to make this thing possible, and it means a lot to me that folks like you are here tonight and helping us to keep this channel running, because you're making it possible for me to keep up the work. I don't mean to say this every single time, and it sounds like I'm trying to blow my own whistle. But nevertheless, I put my heart and soul into this thing, blood, sweat, and tears. A lot of tears. Y'all wouldn't believe it. It's been really rough sometimes to run this channel behind the scenes, but it means a lot to me that folks like you have helped this channel to keep running for so long. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And we are on to the next one, which is a 50 from Jack Ray from Mississippi, who said, for the Make the Enforcer Tier Up Fund. And thank you so much for that, Jack Ray. I don't ever try and get extremely emotional on air, but I can never overstate how much the channel really does mean. And it means a lot to me that so many people always find the channel worthwhile enough to support. It's always a great fear of mine, because unlike other channels, and this is something I always say on air, I always say we don't have a safety net. Unlike other channels, we don't really get to weather things as well as others could, because we don't have ads and sponsors, and a lot of YouTube channels get to weather things just fine, whether their viewers want to support their channel or not, because they have sponsors and ads running. And so while people never see that coming in, some YouTubers are able to float just fine without support. Like, for example, if you ever see a YouTube channel out there that's averaging about 120,000 views a video, that channel is making about $500 every time that video runs, if the video is fully monetized. And so that's why you don't really see a lot of channels out there, especially if you click on their video and an ad runs. You never really see them talking to their viewers about, the support the viewers give, because they could give a damn. They're already making a killing in the background just running their show. The viewer support in Super Chats is just icing on the cake for them. But for us, the Super Chat support is the cake. There is no icing to our cake. It's just the Super Chats. And that's why it always makes me so thankful and so appreciative of y'all, because we don't have, we don't have anyone out there that, just I don't run ads. I mean, I'm the person out there that doesn't let me run ads. And that's something that always makes me so appreciative of y'all's support, and makes me always thank y'all from the bottom of my heart for helping the channel to keep running, because y'all are the only thing that can make it run, because I'm never running an ad. I'm never getting a sponsor on these streams. We may get sponsors if we do gun review videos again. We may get a sponsor for a gun review video, because those, I cannot even kid, are quite expensive, especially when we have to get the guns and stuff like that. That sometimes if we buy the guns and we're not loaning them, that can be very expensive. So we may have to get sponsored for that, just to try and cover the mere expenses of making a video like that. But beyond that, I'm never running an ad or a sponsor on these streams. This thing is either running the way it is, or it's never running at all. And that's how I view it. And so thank you so much once again for the Make the Enforcer Tier Up Fund, because folks like you help to make this channel possible. And also Activista said, advertising gives predictable income. No predictable income creates more stress and pressure. And I'm not going to lie, it does, because with ads, when you get a consistent viewership, you can sit there with ads on, you can go, oh, okay, yeah, I'm good, because I'm already made, I'm already good. And so any extra support, that is what it is. And it's just adding to what I've already made. That's not the case. And I'll show this again, because this is something that I am always incredibly proud to show all of y'all. And let me bring this over here. I don't know what this means by not tested. It's showing that now on my dashboard but you can see monetization status right here, and it's off on this stream right now. Some people have been saying in the comments section yesterday and the day before, what the hell, there's ads running on the stream. These are exceptions, because these got copyrighted. And you can go see the details and everything, and I can tell you, it was literally our entire American intro is now being copyrighted, so both of those got copyrighted. But beyond that, the ads are off for every single stream. or they're age restricted and then we're not allowed to monetize. But beyond that, the ads are always off. And it does add a little bit of extra stress, but I think it's worth it because I think it keeps with our true values and mission of making sure not to use this more as a money grubbing thing. Because there's so many people out there that do things I would consider sketchy and things that raise a lot of questions in my mind. And, you know, these people may be well intentioned and may actually be doing what they're saying, but I don't like the idea of some of these things, and I'll explain one of them. The idea of this channel itself saying, hey, if you give me money directly, I'm going to go give it to people who should get the money. I don't like that because that adds a lot of questions to y'all about where is that money really going once it gets in my hands. And also, that gives me the chance, you know, and I'm not saying I'd ever do this, but it would give me the chance to be able to go and not give that money to other people and go spend it however I want. And then if people ask questions, just obliterate them for asking. I don't like the idea of that. And that's why we run it this way. And it's also as transparent as it can be. Like every time we make any kind of income on this channel, y'all see it. It's in the live chat right now. If y'all look up at the top of the live chat, you'll see the super chats that are still up there. Walter A. Lakotas, Shakamuk, Jack Ray, Hal Roses, another one from Jack Ray, and right now, Sick Lid. Y'all see every single cent that this channel makes. We have nothing to hide. It's public and open for everyone to see. It's very transparent, a lot like our fundraisers, which are also run through YouTube Give. And that is openly transparent as well because YouTube Give is a system set up by YouTube. It's run by YouTube, and we have no hands on the money. Y'all's money goes straight from your pockets and into a bank account that's managed by YouTube, and then after a few weeks, YouTube relinquishes that money in that account to the nonprofit that we fundraise for. And that is a very transparent way to run things. I always want to make sure that when we run this channel, it's as transparent and open as possible, and we want nothing to be hidden. That's how I've always run the channel, and I got to thank folks for appreciating that. You know, just to cover all that, because you know people are talking about, you know, oh, maybe you should run ads, you know, and also Activista was talking about how much stress it brings, and it does bring stress to run a channel like this because I don't know, you know, one night we could get on. And for a few nights this month, after we got done calculating, after YouTube took their cut and how much Enforcer Matt got paid and I got paid, and then did the math on how many hours I worked, I think he was making like, I'm trying to think, it was like $6 an hour, and I was making like $4 because I work a larger amount. And so we were like, dang. You know, if this keeps up, and that's why we started saying on air, you know, we were like, we don't know how much longer this thing can run because, you know, we started doing all the math and everything. We're like, we might not be able to run this for that much longer if this keeps up. And that's why I thank y'all for y'all support and go through massive links to do that. But I'm not one to sound like a broken record because I think I've said that about 3 or 4 times. But just wanting y'all to know why I always thank y'all for the support and why it means a lot to me that people do enjoy the channel enough to find it worthwhile to help us to keep it running. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and it is time for us to move on into the next Super Chat. And also, I'm so sorry once again to everyone who's hanging out, because there's nearly 3,500 of y'all who are still here, ready to ask questions. Y'all's questions will come up. We have 3 more Super Chats to address, and then we'll be getting on into that live chat segment, so that way I can make sure to address y'all's questions that y'all just have in the chat. So be ready with that @Enforcer and your question in the live chat, because it is coming soon. And so with that, we are on to the next one, which is a 20 from Sick Lid, and he said, get rid of Enforcer Matt and keep the money for yourself. Capitalism, baby. And I got to thank you for the support. And, well, you know, I'll reserve comment on that because that is, that's a tough one to answer, Sick Live, right there, because I don't want it to be taken that way, but there may be some things that are going on behind the scenes where some folks may have decided that they no longer can even do this anymore because everything is a little overwhelming. I'll probably tell y'all that in a couple of days, but thank you for the support and helping the channel to keep on running, Sick Lid. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is from Jose Diaz, who said, Puerto Rico loves the Enforcers, LSA, and the free world, Puerto Rico. And I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Jose Diaz, because folks like you help to make this thing possible. And if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing running. And so thank you so much once again, and thank you for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is from Jeff Coat, who said, keep on keeping on, Enforcer. Matt, too. And thank you, guys. And thank you so much once again for the support. And thank you for helping this channel to keep on running and making it possible, because folks like you have made it possible for quite a while. And I got to thank you once again for always keeping this channel running. And also, really quickly, because Cichlid kind of hit on something that I was hoping that I wouldn't have to cover for a few days, so that way, you know, we could make sure that this was going to be a kind of a finalized thing, but I guess since he kind of brought it up in a way that it's not meant to be, I'll bring it up right now. The reason why Matthew is not on air tonight is because he has decided, at least at the moment, that doing law school and doing this channel is far too overwhelming, and he would rather focus on law school full time. I don't know if that's going to be permanent. We'll see as time goes by. But at the moment, that's kind of why tensions kind of boiled over last night on air, if you all noticed, because the stress was getting to him. It's, of course, been getting to me too, but there's a little bit of a moment there where we both got stressed out, and we sat down and talked it out today, and he was kind of the mindset that he can't be continuing trucking on doing both of these things, which I completely understand. I got to wish him the best of luck. He's been an amazing co-host, and that's, really all I can say at the moment. But with that, we are going to be moving on into the live chat. So if y'all have any live chats, I'll be giving a little bit of a moment for everyone to throw in their live chats, and then I'll be trying to answer those for as long as I can. So I'll be giving y'all a moment, and we'll be hopefully getting some live chats in here soon. And so hopefully we got one. Let's see here. Let's see. Danny Avalon said, the Enforcer and Enforcer Matt, incredibly knowledgeable and insightful for their age. When I was in my 20s, I didn't know as much as them. And I gotta thank you for the compliment. I just got this all from reading. And that's a big thing to me. And I gotta thank you so much for the compliment. And also, Tom Exman said, that's not a big deal, that debate. That wasn't really the big deal. The big deal was that, that was... while it didn't seem like a big deal, that was actually a bit of a carryover of the stress that had been going on behind the scenes, because it's a lot to get into, and I'd rather just not bring that up on air. But beyond that, when we got up today and talked about it, he was kind of the mindset that this was just, it was a lot to do both. And it is. It's very stressful. We've gone through some tough times in the background, and that's all I can say. So, with that, we're moving on to the next one, which is a 50 Swedish kroner from Quantum Fighter, and he said a bit of thanks for all the daily great news for 2 years. And thank you so much for the support and helping the channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one, which is from Halligan218, and he threw in a 5, and he said, do the nonprofits know which channel on YouTube the donations come from? You do a great job. And, no, they don't, actually. The support is sent to them just as a lump sum from YouTube. They don't actually get a breakdown of what YouTube channels raised what. And so they don't ever really get to know. So the nonprofits never know that we're the ones doing it. That's pretty much what I'm trying to say. But I've never cared about that. I've never been a one to care about, everything that a nonprofit hears. It's like, who cares if that nonprofit knows where the money came from? All I care about is, are they going to be able to help save more lives? And so, with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, let's see. Do we have any questions? Let's see here. Let's see here. Oh, Tom Exman had a question. He said, okay, here's a good question. How many BTRs did Russia have at the beginning of the war? Russia had several thousand. It was 3,000 to 3,500 active BTRs at the beginning of the war, and that number has gradually dwindled over time, but they've also been introducing new ones into service. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is from Angry Penguin, which is 5, and he said, love for you and Matt, and thank you for the support. And with that, I think we're going to round it out for the night. But of course, I got to thank you all so much once again for watching. It's been absolutely incredible to have you all on tonight. And if y'all did enjoy, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, as we keep this channel running 6 days a week at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, and long live the Lee Spring Army. pissed.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.